good old Union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
Hello, Tennessee Valley. This is The Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator Adam Keller, and we are broadcasting live online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio studio in Huntsville, Alabama. Today, we are dissecting the tentative agreement at UPS with some help from Teddy Ostrow. The Alabama Education Association's gamble paid off this legislative session, but their luck may be running out. We're going to talk to you about what happened last week in Southern labor, all that and more on today's program. If you want to be part of the show today, we've got a phone number and the line is open. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also send us a text message through that number, but we're not going to be taking calls for a little while. Not going to be taking calls until after we have had Teddy on. We've got a couple of Alabama stories that we wanted to get to before we started taking calls, but very excited to hear especially what the UPS Teamsters in the audience think about the tentative agreement. That's very, we're really looking forward to hearing your thoughts. We are not Teamsters. We are not UPS workers. We're just members of other unions here in Alabama who happen to have a union radio show, and so this is obviously a very big topic in our world. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, then you can find us anywhere you find anything online, particularly on our website, TVLR.fm. You should bookmark that page and sign up for our newsletter so we can send you our new stuff. We have pre-orders open for our new shirt, TVLR.fm/store, and if you want to become a monthly donor, you can go to TVLR.fm/donate. Our largest single source of funding comes directly from our listeners, so we could not do this without your support. Also, if you're a member of a union, then definitely think about getting your local to sponsor the show. We couldn't do it without our union sponsors as well, so please consider that if you're a member of a union here locally or not locally.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. We welcome all of our listeners, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, Unclaimed Mysteries Internet Radio, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, or through your favorite podcast app. We are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check that out. As most of you know, we are not media professionals, just a few diehard unionists who believe that Alabama and the South's labor movement and working class deserve a bigger platform. We're hoping this project can make a difference on that front, and we could not do it without you. We want to thank everyone for tuning in. Whether you're a loyal fan or a first-time listener, we appreciate you spending some time with us.
Speaking of people spending time with us, we have in the studio today Simon Peter is a local comedian who frequently performs at Shenanigans over off of Lehman Ferry Road. Simon, introduce yourself. Talk to us about what you do around here.
All right. My name is Simon Peter. I go by the stage name Sci-Fi. I'm just a stand-up comedian, like he said, locally here in Huntsville. Kind of regional. Been performing in Laughing Skull out in Atlanta, a couple of places up in Nashville, Birmingham as well. I'm just a really silly guy, so it's kind of ironic that I'm here, actually. I find it very ironic.
All right. Well, glad to have you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we are not like we were talking about before the show. We are not very funny people, and we've always talked about having trying to make the show a little bit more entertaining. So here's to that happening today. Maybe we'll see. Yeah, so with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into our first segment today, and that is going to be Last Week in Southern Labor. That's a segment that we did for a long time with the support of Jonah Furman, who did a newsletter rounding up everything that happened in labor across the country in one newsletter. It was a very ambitious project, and he was very good at it. It was called Who Gets the Bird? And we compiled the information from the South out of that newsletter and talked about it here with his permission and cooperation. But he is now International Comms Director for the UAW, so he's got bigger fish to fry than helping us on our radio program, but we're very happy for him. And so we've started trying to duplicate that effort, and today is going to be one of our first cracks at it. And so in the last week, there have been, and one of the reasons that we think this segment is so important is that, you know, the stuff, there's stuff happening all across the South all the time, right? Workers are moving all the time. They're always filing for union elections. They are winning grievances. They're winning back pay for their members. They are getting their members' jobs back after they've been unjustly fired. And so we want to highlight a little bit of that to kind of bring that to light, because not enough people know about it. And so the BCTGM International Union, the Bakers, Confectionery, Tobacco, and Grain Millers Union, is organizing at Miller Coors in Elkton, Virginia, filing on July the 20th to represent 353 full and part-time hourly employees in blending and brewing and packaging in the warehouse. On the 21st, the United Association of Plumbers and Pipe Fitters filed to represent 76 employees at Amtech Controls Southeast in Pineville, North Carolina. And included in that bargaining unit are all full-time and regular part-time production and maintenance employees, including welders, fitters, painters, blasters, material handlers, machinists, crane operators, quality control technicians, and testers, helpers employed by the employer at its location in Pineville. The Communication Workers of America filed to represent 46 employees at Georgia Windstream LLC in Dalton, Georgia on July the 24th. In Orlando, Florida, the United Electrical, CWA's Industrial Union Division filed to represent 25 workers at GE Appliances Factory Service Business of Hare U.S. Appliance Solutions on July the 24th. Ostensibly, we share the District of Columbia with the country, so up next week out of D.C., the SEIU, Service Employees International Union Local 500, filed on July the 26th to represent 19 workers at GW Museum and the Textile Museum. The International Union of Painters and Allied Trades District Council 51, Local Union 963, filed on July the 26th to represent 13 full-time and regular part-time glazers, foremen, and field caulkers at Fredericksburg Glass and Mirror in Fredericksburg, Virginia. On July the 27th, the BCTGM International Union filed to represent 16 full-time and part-time hourly employees at Flower Garden Bakery in Richmond, Virginia. And finally, in a small election, the United Association of Journeymen and Apprentices of the Plumbing and Pipe Fitting Industry of the United States, Local Union 669, Road Sprinkler Fitters, filed on July the 27th to represent 5 workers at E-Fire Southern Incorporated in Gulfport, Mississippi.
All right, now turning to the strike map per the AFL-CIO. The BCTGM 390G has been on strike since June 4th against International Flavors and Fragrances in Memphis, Tennessee. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW 1464, are on strike against Wabtec since October of last year in Kansas City, Missouri. The United Food and Commercial Workers, UFCW 655, on strike against Shangri-La Marijuana Dispensary since May in Columbia, Missouri. Interesting that the marijuana dispensary has had a strike since May. In Nashville, Tennessee, Coffee Workers of the South, UFCW 1995, have been on strike against Three Brothers Coffee since June 13th. Of course, outside the South, there are strikes happening with grad students at the University of Michigan, as well as hotel workers in Los Angeles, among other places. And earlier this month, outside the AFL-CIO, Starbucks Workers United struck quite a few Starbucks locations across the South, from Kentucky to Texas. And shout out to the Union of Southern Service Workers, which is part of the SEIU Fight for 15 movement, which struck a Waffle House in Columbia, South Carolina for 3 days on July 8th through 10th over pay, health and safety, staffing, into mandatory meal deduction policy, and scheduling. All of the strike info was provided by the Cornell ILR School Labor Action Tracker.
Let us know if there's anything that we missed, and we'll be happy to include it in next week's update. And feel free to send us any tips throughout the week as they come in.
Absolutely.
We want to, of course, the goal is for this to be as exhaustive of a list as possible, but, we're only two folks, and there's only so much that we can see on our own. So feel free to shoot us a tip if you see anything that you think would be worth including in Last Week in Southern Labor. With that, we're going to go ahead and head to a break, pay a couple of bills, and we'll be right back talking about what bosses were up to last week, and it is not good. And then we're going to be talking to Teddy Ostrow about the tentative agreement at UPS. Stay tuned, folks.
In Alabama, more than 200,000 of our friends and family members are living without health care coverage. Often folks can't stay healthy enough even to keep their jobs. We can fix this. It's time for us to find a way to close the health care coverage gap so that people can remain at work. Let's make this a priority. Let's close this gap and cover Alabama. To learn more and how you can help, visit coveralabama.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Attention union members, membership organizations, podcasters, or anyone with a payment processing need. The future is here, and your organization needs to be prepared by working with Unionly. With Unionly, your union or organization can take payments on a mobile device, eliminating processing fees, giving you a better price than other payment processing methods, while at the same time supporting a union-friendly business with a specialized skill set to meet your needs. Your members will thank you when they pay their dues at their convenience without waiting in line to deposit cash or check. Start preparing for the future today by calling 206-595-8631 or visiting unionly.io.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
The sign hit the city like a bolt of lightning.
You know the photo. It's iconic. marches in the streets holding a simple sign with a simple message.
I am a man.
The I Am Story podcast explores the fight that inspired those words, how a group of sanitation workers in Memphis stood up and made history.
They don't see us as men and women.
Go to IamStory.com or wherever you get your podcasts to subscribe.
I'm attorney Tommy Sinyard. When you've been injured and need help, you need a lawyer who's with you.
Sinyard Law. You need attorneys always available to take care of you.
Sinyard Law. And keep you in the loop. It's your case. You need to know what's happening.
Sinyard Law. And never a charge to meet with us to evaluate your case.
Sinyard Law. A new firm, but an old name. One that will stay with you every step of the way.
Sinyard Law. The name with proven results.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth should go to labor, and you are listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-hosts Adam Keller and Sci-Fi in studio today. Appreciate everybody tuning in, hanging out with us in the chat, and appreciate the conversation. A lot of UPS Teamsters in the chat today. Really looking forward to, hopefully some of y'all will be able to call in after we get Teddy on to talk about what's in this tentative agreement, because what I'm seeing in the chat is really kind of representative. There's certainly some division. There's some people that think it's good enough, people that don't think it's good enough, and so the question is how many people are on each side. But like I said, we're definitely not UPS Teamsters, but we are excited for what has been gained in this contract, and and the question is whether or not UPS Teamsters think it is enough. I also wanted to read a text message that we got last week from Jack in New Jersey. He said, I recently saw a local production of Rent and find myself wondering whether the theater had union representation. I was thrilled to learn that the Paper Mill Playhouse has contracts with IATSE Local 21, the American Federation of Musicians 16-248, and also has an LORT contract. The Stagehands Local 21 also represents the folks working backstage at the Asbury Park music venues. Shout out to Adam and his union brothers and sisters who make the art that we love possible.
Really appreciate that, brother. Yeah, absolutely. I'm a proud member of IATSE Local 900. We'll talk a little bit about IATSE probably later in the show, but really appreciate that. And yeah, glad to see the union representation right there.
Absolutely. So another regular segment that we have been doing is Boss Watch, because every night, if you look on the local news, you're going to see some poor or working person accused, alleged, that's when these mugshots are taken. They've not been convicted of anything, of petty theft, of shoplifting, of, all sorts of things. But the fact of the matter is that bosses commit just as many, or in fact more crimes than working people, but you don't see their mugshots. So we want to do what little we can to rectify that. Just a couple of really quick statistics. Wage theft accounts for more stolen property than all other property crime combined in the United States. In Alabama, the homicide rate is 6.2 per 100,000, and the workforce death rate is 5.5 per 100,000. You are just as likely to die on the job in the state of Alabama as you are to be murdered, but our news does not reflect that. So we're trying to do what we can. Let's start off in Jacksonville, Florida, where the U.S. Department of Labor investigation finds that Jacksonville psychiatric treatment facilities failed to keep workers safe and follow safety procedures. This came out on July the 25th. OSHA cited United Health Services of Delaware Incorporated, which ran facilities in Florida, after a patient attacked a worker. A federal workplace safety investigation found a Jacksonville psychiatric health and substance disorder facility did not follow safety procedures, leaving workers vulnerable to injuries, including one who a patient reportedly kicked in the face. The U.S. Department of Labor's Occupational Safety and Health Administration learned a registered nurse employed by UHS of Delaware Incorporated and TBJ Behavioral Center LLC, which operated as River Point Behavioral Health. It's never a good sign when you've got all of these names, this is operated by this person, which is affiliated with this LLC. That's just never a good sign. A registered nurse was writing reports in January of 2023 when a patient entered the staff-only workspace. The patient then allegedly punched and kicked the nurse in the face and head, causing the employee to suffer several injuries, including a loss of consciousness and lacerations. This is a very, very serious injury here. The OSHA Area Office Director Scott Tisdale in Jacksonville, Florida, said, "Our investigation found that River Point Behavioral Health failed to address their employees' safety concerns in a timely manner. No one should have to go to work daily fearing for their lives and physical well-being." And so, after an investigation, OSHA issued the organization a citation for a serious violation for its failure to provide a workplace free from recognized health and safety hazards, which caused or were likely to cause serious physical harm, and the agency proposed $15,625 in fines. And just on background about this organization, since 2017, OSHA has investigated 3 Florida facilities affiliated with UHS of Delaware Incorporated after similar complaints about exposure to workplace violence. River Point Behavioral Health employs about 182 workers in Jacksonville and finances patient care, in part by federal insurance plans like Medicare and TRICARE. UHS of Delaware Incorporated is affiliated with UHS Inc., which is one of the nation's largest hospital and healthcare services systems, with 400 acute care hospitals, behavioral health facilities, and ambulatory centers in the United States, Puerto Rico, and the UK. The company's got 15 business days from receipt of their citations to comply, to request an informal conference with OSHA, or to contest the findings. Heading over to South Carolina on July the 20th, the Department of Labor recovered $66,000 in back wages for 20 workers after finding that overtime and minimum wage violations at 6 Napa Auto Parts locations. The investigation found that Bellinger Parts Group Incorporated, that operates as Napa Auto Parts stores, made illegal deductions from the employees' pay at 6 South Carolina locations for store damage, cash register shortages, and uniforms.
Oh, no. No. Come on now. You can't do that. You can't deduct.
That's illegal. And these deductions even caused some workers' pay to fall below the $7.25 an hour minimum wage.
That's just low
that was set by the Federal Labor Standards Act. So really bad stuff here from the Bellinger Parts Group. They also failed to pay non-exempt salary counter salespeople and delivery drivers overtime for hours worked over 40 in a work week. Investigators also learned that the employer did not include non-discretionary sales bonuses in some employees' regular rate when calculating correct overtime rates, causing the organization to pay overtime premiums at rates lower than what is required by law. The back wages were recovered in the amount of $66,322 for 20 employees. So really wild stuff there, literally stealing from their paychecks and not paying overtime, and then paying less than the overtime they earned. Really crazy stuff. Heading a little bit inland in Fairfax, Virginia, on July the 18th, a court required Virginia home care provider and owners to pay about, get this, $1.6 million in back wages and liquidated damages to 202 employees willfully denied overtime. And see, this is the thing that I'm talking about, right? These people stole. They stole almost $1 million from their employees. But they're not going to get arrested. You're not going to see their mugshots on the news. But if you get a fella goes into the dollar store and takes some deodorant, right? You're going to see his face on the news. You're going to see her face on the news, but you're not going to see these people on the news.
No, you can definitely see my cousin's face on the news.
Yeah.
For way less than that. This is insane, man.
Yeah. Every week, stuff like this comes out. Every single week. So the First Adult and Pediatrics Healthcare Services must also pay $48,000 in penalties for the violations. A federal court has directed a Fairfax Home Care Agency and its owners to pay more than $1.6 million in back wages and liquidated damages to 202 home health aides in a consent judgment obtained by the United States Department of Labor. This action by the U.S. District Court of the Eastern District of Virginia follows an investigation of the company by the department's Wage and Hour Division that the company and that found the company and its owners, Carolyn Brandt Taylor and Kafumdi Josephine Okacha, willfully denied the affected workers' overtime wages by paying them straight time rates for all hours worked, including hours over 40 in a work week. The investigators also learned that the employers did not even keep required payroll records, which is also a violation of the Fair Labor Standards Act. And despite
Jacob, you don't keep records of your own misdeeds,
right? That's the thing. But despite the division's findings, the company and Bryant Taylor and Okacha, they refused to pay back wages and damages that were owed to the workers. In September of 2022, the department's Office of the Regional Solicitor filed suit to recover the monies owed. So, right, the Department of Labor said, hey, you've stolen money from people. You got to pay it back, okay? And they just said no. And in September of 2022, so this is almost a year ago now that the Department of Labor filed suit to get this because they wouldn't willingly comply with orders from the federal government.
That's pretty wild.
The court's judgment required the employees to pay $834,000 in back wages and an equal amount in liquidated damages to the affected workers. They must also pay $48,000 in civil money penalty to the department for their intentional violations. And here's this as well: they can't violate the law in the future. I'm not sure how effective that order is going to be, but we'll see, I guess. Heading back down to Florida, in Sebastian on July the 21st, the EEOC released a press release saying that HoCorp Incorporated must pay $50,000 to settle a discrimination lawsuit. This is because the fast food restaurant franchise did not provide interpreters to applicants and employees, ASL interpreters. HoCorp is a fast food restaurant franchise operating 7 restaurants in Indian River and Brevard counties. They are going to be paying $50,000 and provide American Sign Language interpreters to applicants and employees upon request for interviews, orientations, trainings, and performance reviews to settle a disability discrimination lawsuit brought by the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the federal agency announced on July the 21st. And so this is, just in case you think this is being too much, right? It's not that they've got to hire an ASL interpreter to follow these people around the entire time. If their disability is to an extent that they just can't perform the job, the Equal Employment and Opportunity Commission does not require you to hire them for that job. But they do require you to make reasonable accommodations. And a reasonable accommodation for somebody that is hard of hearing is an American Sign Language interpreter for things like this, like interviews, orientations, trainings, and performance reviews. Right? Those are not, you're not got an ASL person following them around all the time. These are just critical elements where you are able to apply for the job, where you're being rated, stuff like this. So it's absolutely doable to have that kind of thing for people on request. And it's the law, actually, to do that. According to the EEOC suit, an applicant advised HoCorp's hiring and training manager that she was hard of hearing and asked for an ASL interpreter for her orientation with the company. The manager responded by stating that HoCorp does not provide ASL interpreters, which made it impossible for the applicant to attend the orientation and start her job. Such alleged conduct violates the Americans with Disability Act, which prohibits discrimination based on a disability. The EEOC filed suit in U.S. District Court for the Southern District District of Florida, West Palm Beach Division. After first attempting to reach a pre-litigation settlement through its conciliation process, in addition to the monetary relief, the 3-year consent decree requires HoCorp to update its job postings and hiring advertisements, revise its anti-discrimination policies, post a notice regarding this lawsuit, and report on the handling of requests for reasonable accommodations. HoCorp will also provide live training to owners, managers, and human resources personnel on the Americans with Disabilities Act, as well as training designed specifically to raise awareness about issues affecting the deaf community and dispelling stereotypes associated with hiring deaf or hard of hearing individuals. Finally, HoCorp will conduct an internal audit to identify potential obstacles and to make the workplace more accessible to deaf and hard of hearing applicants. The EEOC Miami District Director Evangeline Hawthorne said that HoCorp should be commended for agreeing to a consent decree early in this litigation. This settlement includes provisions that ensure deaf and hard of hearing applicants and employees will have the benefit of ASL interpreters going forward, and we appreciate HoCorp's commitment to the improvement.
A little late, but okay.
Right. Being diplomatic there.
Right, they clearly are. Yeah, they're just glad they settled. I understand.
In Houston, Texas on July the 17th, Lion Elastomers pays $175,000 to settle an EEOC disability discrimination lawsuit, settling federal charges that the company subjected job applicants to disability discrimination because of perceived back impairments. The background on this is that Lion Elastomers is a manufacturing plant in Port Neches, Texas, and they agreed to pay $175,000 and provide other relief pursuant to a consent decree entered by a federal district court on July the 7th, resolving a disability discrimination lawsuit filed by the EEOC. The complaint alleged that the company denied employment to a class of individuals it unlawfully regarded as disabled. According to the lawsuit, after being offered packing operator/materials handler positions, the class member applicants were required to undergo pre-employment medical and physical examinations. The EEOC charged that Lion then unlawfully rescinded the class members' job offers based on the company's perception that the class members had back impairments and were unable to lift heavy objects. Additionally, the suit alleged that Lion violated federal regulations by failing to maintain personnel records related to its hiring and termination decisions. The federal agency alleged that such conduct violated the Americans with Disabilities Act, which prohibits employers from discriminating against applicants and employees because of their actual, perceived, or record of disability. In addition to the monetary relief, the 30-month consent decree settling the suit requires Lion to revise its anti-discrimination policies and distribute them to its employees and provide its managers and human resources personnel specialized training on the Americans with Disabilities Act, provisions against disability discrimination, and their legal obligation to prevent, address, and remedy disability discrimination. The decree also requires Lion to post a discrimination notice at its Port Neches facility, comply with record keeping and reporting requirements of the ADA, and submit periodic compliance reports to the EEOC. This lawsuit should remind employers that the ADA protects applicants as well as employees from disability discrimination, said Rudy Sestaita, regional attorney for the EEOC's Houston District Office. Final story here for Boss Watch. In Louisiana and Texas on July the 25th, the Department of Labor announced that they found McDonald's franchisees allowing minors to work longer and later than the law permits, as well as operate dangerous equipment. The investigations identify violations in 2 states affecting 83 minors at 16 locations. Federal investigations at 16 McDonald's franchises in Louisiana and Texas have found child labor violations affecting 83 minors. And in Louisiana, the investigators with the department's Wage and Hour Division discovered that CLB Investments in Metairie employed 72 workers, 14 and 15-year-olds, to work longer and later than the law permits at 12 restaurants in Kenner, Jefferson, Metairie, and New Orleans. The division determined that the employer allowed 3 children to operate a manual deep fryer, which is a task prohibited for employees under 16. The department assessed CLB Investments with $56,106 in civil money penalties for violations found at these 12 locations, one of which is now closed. The division also found similar violations at 4 McDonald's locations operated in Texas by Merwin & Son, LLC, in Cedar Park, Georgetown, and Leander. Investigators found that the company employed 10 minors, 14 to 15 years old, to work longer and later than permitted. They also learned that the employer allowed 7 children to perform jobs prohibited or considered hazardous for young workers. Specifically, the employer allowed all 7 to operate a manual deep fryer and oven, and 2 of the 7 to also use a trash compactor. The department also assessed Merwin & Son with $21,466 in civil money penalties for its violations. These findings follow a May 2023 announcement of federal investigations that found child labor violations by 3 McDonald's franchise operators in Kentucky, which involved more than 300 children at 62 locations in 4 states. So this is something that is happening across McDonald's franchises across the country.
We got to protect the kids, y'all.
Yep.
Right. I feel like that's such a big thing right now. Everybody's talking about protecting kids. And that's why it's a great thing that you guys are doing this, because I have not been hearing any of this on the news whatsoever.
Right. And like I said, this is all just stuff from the last week and a half.
Yeah.
This kind of stuff comes out on the Department of Labor every single day.
Yeah.
And this is just from the South, right?
Yeah. It's insane. Like, half the time, I'm sitting back, I'm just in awe over here, because I'm like, when did this happen? Nobody told me anything. Like, that stat that you said at the very beginning of the segment where you were saying the homicide rate in Alabama is, what was
6.2. 6.2.
But you're like 5.5, it's you could die on the job?
Yeah. 6.2 per 100,000 people die by homicide in Alabama every year, and 5.5 per 100,000 die in Alabama on the job.
That's insane. I feel like if people knew that, it would just flip let's take something like the first 48 hours. If you watch a show like that, you go, wow, Birmingham, I don't want to go there. I'm going to get murdered. Well, it turns out you don't want to go to work because you might die.
Exactly. And that stat, 5.5 per 100,000, I found that from the AFL-CIO's Death on the Job report that came out back in April. They do that every year.
Yeah.
And it showed that our death rate on the job is the 4th highest in the country, which is one of the reasons that CNBC ranked Alabama as the 4th worst place to live and work. Wow. And the Council of Bosses, also known as the Business Council of Alabama, came out with an op-ed. The president of the organization came out with an op-ed in the Alabama Political Reporter last week, really protesting too much, I think, about that, about that CNBC thing. She was talking about, I mean, the funny thing is that she didn't cite any statistics about, like, how it's good to work in Alabama or anything like that. She just said, we've got so much good values and all of this good stuff. And another funny thing about her is that she's ostensibly a Democrat. She, that's what a lot of the Republicans, when she became president of the Business Council of Alabama, they were making a bunch of noises about, oh no, she's a Democrat, she's not going to be good for business interests. And well, this op-ed coming out after the CNBC, she is perfectly comfortable with screwing over workers just as much as any Republican. So yeah, really, really crazy stuff. Here's some more background on the child labor stuff. In fiscal year 2022, the division found that child labor violations involving 3,876 children nationwide, which is an increase of more than 60% since 2018. All of this also comes amid pushes across the country by Republican state legislatures to loosen child labor laws, including in one state attempting to allow children to go back into the coal mines.
What?
Yes, that's real.
Oh my gosh. All right. Yeah.
I think that was Iowa. Was that Iowa, Adam?
Yeah, Iowa, I know, has been really trying to loosen up child labor laws. Arkansas has loosened up theirs to some extent. I think we've talked about that, where they did away with parental consent being required.
What?
Which is a little scary.
What?
I can envision lots of bad scenarios playing out that way.
Yeah.
All right, I think there's TV shows that start out that way.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
it is a little bit scary. Like we've said before, we thought we won on the child labor issue 100 years ago. We thought okay, that's done, that's squashed, check that off the list. But here we are in 2023 dealing with child labor just, running rampant all over our country.
That is insane.
Yeah. That's no other way to describe it. But that's it for our Boss Watch segment. And we're going to be bringing on Teddy Ostrow really in just a few minutes to talk about this tentative agreement at UPS. But
yeah, looking forward to that for sure.
We felt like this would be a really good opportunity to talk about, because this whole saga with the Teamsters and UPS, it's really kind of captured the country's imagination, or the country's attention in a lot of ways. And it is, whatever the outcome from the membership, whether or not they vote in the tentative agreement, this is really illustrative of the power that working people have when we come together, when we bargain together, when we organize together, that we simply don't get when we try to bargain individually, right? And that's a really big ethos in the state of Alabama among a lot of people. People tell me I'm a union activist. I'm on the board of our labor council here. I am a steward. I'm really involved in the labor movement. And so many people tell me, if your job is so bad, why don't you just get a different one? And that's not the way to make jobs better, right? That's not how the Teamsters made their jobs better. That's not how the Teamsters won $42 an hour for full-time package car drivers, which is what they make right now. And it's not how they were able to secure $49 an hour by the end of the contract if this tentative agreement is ratified. It's not how, it's just not how gains are made, doing this individual kind of thing. It's coming together and using your power. And that's really what unions are about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to remind folks, a little bit about why unions are a good thing for workers, because of so much attention that has been brought on by this struggle, the struggles of the actors and writers on strike, and so many other high-profile labor struggles happening right now. So obviously we're going to talk about the tentative agreement between the Teamsters and UPS, and wherever you line up on that, or other questions around leadership or other issues, I think we can find broad consensus that workers are better off at UPS with representation through the Teamsters than similar workers in non-union facilities, right? I'd much rather work for UPS as a driver than FedEx. And we can see a distinct union advantage for the workers. And because the workers are stronger through organization, they are better off on a material basis. They get to vote up or down on a contract proposal negotiated by their representatives. They get to elect leaders, organize caucuses, contest elections, change bylaws, debate at the meetings and assemblies. Unions are human institutions and thus fallible institutions. But unions are, ultimately, to varying degrees, worker institutions and democratic institutions that belong to the membership. And we can and should always be organizing to ensure that they are vibrantly democratic institutions that are by and for the members, and institutions that see themselves as part of a broader labor movement and working class movement to build a better world that is not only possible, but necessary. And I want to turn to Michael Yates, who wrote a classic book published by our friends over at the Monthly Review Press called Why Unions Matter. Yates argued, quote, that unions mattered because they were the one institution that has dramatically improved the lives of the majority of the people and had the potential to radically transform both the economic and political landscape, making both more democratic. Yates showed with clear and decisive data that union members enjoyed significant advantages over non-union workers: higher wages, more and better benefits, better access to many kinds of leaves of absence, a democratic voice in their workplaces, and a better understanding of their political and legal rights. What is more, unions benefited non-union workers through their political agitations and through what is called the spillover effect. Non-union employers will treat their employees better, if only to avoid unionization. But hey, you don't have to take it from me or from Michael Yates. Let's see what the United States Department of Labor says on their website. Quote, labor unions improve wages and working conditions for all workers, whether they are union members or not. Unions help reduce wage gaps for women workers and workers of color. Union members have better job safety protections and better paid leave than non-union workers, and are more secure exercising their rights in the workplace. As I said, unions are human institutions with human leadership. There are tensions and contradictions and faults within our labor movement and among the institutions that make it up. There's political tension between conservatives, liberals, leftists, libertarians, moderates, and apolitical types within our movement. We have that political diversity in part because there are arguments you can make in favor of unions from all of these different perspectives. And many workers are able to consider not just their political ideologies or their hot takes on the latest topic of political discourse or culture war, but they're able to consider their direct material benefit from being in the union, whatever disagreements they might have with the union or its leadership or even, their fellow members. And, I know for me, I've been able to work alongside and organize alongside and struggle alongside workers of various beliefs. Many of them quite different from mine. But nonetheless, we were united in our common interest as workers and in our common expectations of respect and dignity for ourselves and our coworkers. I mean, if you've ever been a delegate to your union's National Assembly, and I have, there's a hell of a lot of debate about all kinds of issues within our unions. There's tension between the rank and file and the leadership. There's tension inside the unions between governance and management and staff. There's tension between different unions, whether it's, building trades versus industrial unions or turf wars within certain industries. Unions are remarkable at bringing people together across racial, gender, religious, ethnic, and other demographic and cultural lines. But of course, that diversity also means tension at times. There can be no arguing that U.S. labor has been on the back foot for the last 50 years, though arguably labor's peak strength was even, well before that, when our movement was able to win Social Security and unemployment and disability and overtime pay and the 40-hour work week and came damn close to getting the 30-hour work week. But, before I go off about that, reflecting back on this more contemporary movement, we've been decimated by Reaganism, neoliberalism, call it whatever you want to. We've been decimated by globalization and free trade, decimated by anti-worker laws and policies and politicians and regulators and judges and bureaucrats, decimated by the huge shift in the balance of power. Corporate America, which is aligned with ever increasingly right-wing Republicans alongside corporate Democrats, struck back hard against the progress that we made in the early to mid 20th century. Our unions have lost ground in terms of our membership and our density and in terms of our political and economic power. And as a result, we've seen working people's lives get significantly worse, from stagnant wages to worse benefits and security to rising cost of living to even lowered life expectancies in some cases. All while inequality of income and wealth have skyrocketed to levels we haven't seen since the Roaring '20s and the Gilded Age of the late 19th century robber barons. We, the working class, have by and large been getting our ass kicked in the class struggle of these last 5 decades, and reversing this trend will take strong unions, it will take collective organization, and will take working class solidarity. And despite the decline of labor power in the modern era, we have reasons to believe that in these past couple years, particularly with the disruption of COVID, among other factors, that there is an upsurge in the working class movement generally and the labor movement specifically. Unions are at record highs in Gallup opinion polls. We've seen unions spreading in new industries and among new companies, whether it's workers taking on corporate giants like Amazon, to the growth of service sector organizing, to minor league athletes going union, to the organizing happening on college and university campuses across the nation. We've seen a wave of youth getting involved in labor in a way we haven't seen in years. We've seen exciting new strategies and tactics in labor organizing, from the building of grassroots independent unions to the innovative use of technology. We've seen rank-and-file reform caucuses grow in strength in union after union, and even winning power, like with the Teamsters and with the UAW. We've seen high-profile strikes, including right now with the actors and writers, as well as high-profile labor struggles that have come close to strikes. In surviving the pandemic and its aftermath, workers saw the power of unions to fight for better conditions. And at least for a brief moment, workers gained some leverage during the disruptions in the economy and the limited but still impactful expansion of government relief and social spending. Unemployment is still quite low, even though the Federal Reserve seems bound and determined to undercut worker bargaining power through its fiscal policy and is deliberately trying to increase unemployment. But we've even seen unions become a much bigger story in the corporate-controlled media and a much bigger topic of discussion among politicians, whether it's pandering from some or targeting by others. The labor movement has the power to bring together the diverse working-class majority along our common interest. The labor movement has the potential to improve our lives as workers, from immediate shop floor wins to longer-term progress in our communities and neighborhoods. Unions can foster relationships among workers, which are critical to our success. In the South in particular, the labor movement has the power and the potential to counteract the divide and conquer strategies of the bosses and the politicians, to fight back against the hyper-exploitation and hyper-extraction of the South and its workforce and its resources. The labor movement can build the interracial people power that has so frightened the ruling elites in the South all these years, because they know it can bring the kind of change we so urgently need. Building a working-class movement rooted in love, justice, and solidarity can transform our lives and our society. And given the multiple layers of crisis we're facing as a society and as a species, it seems to me we don't have a choice but to do that, to build a working-class movement rooted in love, justice, and solidarity.
Yeah, absolutely. And beyond a lot of this, interpersonal benefits, there are a lot of, like Adam said, real material benefits. Union workers make more. They're more likely to have health insurance. They have more time off, all sorts of stuff. We don't have time to get into all of that we had prepped. We want to make sure we have time to get Teddy on the program. So we're going to go ahead and take a break really quick, our final break, and then we'll be right back with Teddy Ostrow to talk about the tentative agreement between the Teamsters and UPS.
In Alabama, more than 200,000 of our friends and neighbors are living without health care coverage. Often folks can't stay healthy enough to keep their jobs. We need to fix this. Let's close the health care coverage gap. To learn more, visit coveralabama.org.
Support for this program also comes from the Ironworkers Local 477. So if you are looking for contractors with lower than average EMR and TRIR, they tell me that if you need to know what those mean, then you will. Or if you need to supplement a workforce at any level for any amount of time, short or long term, if you need ironworkers that come trained and certified at no extra cost, or if you need workers from superintendent down to general laborer, and you're looking to start work on a project, or you're unhappy with your current contractor situation, you need to call my friend Jeb Miles with the Ironworkers Local 477. They only work with the best in the business, vetted contractors, and can do all kinds of jobs, from roofing to steel and bridge erection, from welding to heavy rigging, from structural repairs to machinery alignment, and much more. They supply manpower on 4 of the 5 largest projects in North Alabama, so you know they're legit. If you need good quality, safe, efficient, diligent, and knowledgeable workers on your job, then you need the Ironworkers Local 477. Call Jeb Miles at 256-383-3333. 3334 or via email at local477@bellsouth.net, and make sure you tell them that you heard about them on the Valley Labor Report.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
The Laborers International Union of North America, Local 366, is proudly recruiting North Alabama workers to work construction and nuclear plant maintenance. If you're interested, please contact Donna at their training center to start the process. That phone number is 256-415-7452. Again, that phone number is 256-415-7452. No experience is needed. Free training is offered, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs that have benefits is their mission. Live better, work union, Local 366, feel the power.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
I'm Attorney Tommy Sinyard. When you've been injured and need help, you need a lawyer who's with you.
Sinyard Law. You need attorneys always available to take care of you. Sinyard Law.
And keep you in the loop. It's your case. You need to know what's happening.
Sinyard Law. And never a charge to meet with us to evaluate your case. Sinyard Law.
A new firm, but an old name. One that will stay with you every step of the way.
Sinyard Law. The name with proven results.
Do you work in an auto manufacturing plant? Are you tired of taking pride in your work without getting the respect you deserve? Consider joining the fight to unionize. Auto workers across the industry are coming together because with a union, we can negotiate for the pay, benefits, and security that we deserve and can help sustain our families. In union plants, workers bargain for long-term wage increases, competitive bonuses, and more affordable benefits. You can join the growing wave of organizing today. Find out more and contact us at Uniting Auto Workers on Facebook or contact UAW Region 8 in Lebanon, Tennessee by going to www.uawregion8.net. That's www.uawregion8.net. A better future is ours.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Alabama's only union talk radio show. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. In the studio with us, we have local comedian Sci-Fi. We appreciate him jumping in. And we appreciate everybody hanging out with us on the radio and in the YouTube chat. We have about 100 people watching us, and only 30 people have liked the stream. So let's get those numbers up and subscribe as well. I was checking our YouTube analytics the other day, and 80% of the people who are watching our videos are not subscribed. We are only 50 away from 5,000, so we could make it if everybody watching the stream subscribed. Either way, we really appreciate your time, and let's go ahead and bring Teddy on. Teddy Ostrow is a journalist. He is a freelance journalist, and he is host of the Upsurge podcast. That is a podcast that has been going on for some time now about this fight between the Teamsters and UPS. He's been covering these contract negotiations long before anybody in the mainstream media has, before they realized that this was going on. Our first coverage of this, I believe, was almost exactly a year ago when we brought on Brother Tony Rosario from New York, Local 804, to talk about the contract negotiations and the contract campaign. Negotiations had not begun yet, but nobody has been as thorough and as consistent in their coverage as Teddy. So we're really excited to have him on to talk about this. Teddy, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me again. Nice to see y'all.
Yep, you too. Before we jump into the tentative agreement, though, can you give us a really quick background on what is going on at Yellow Freight? I saw some mention of that in the chat this morning as well, and that is another, that's another story that's been in the news involving the Teamsters. Obviously, not as large as UPS, but what is the deal there?
Yeah, this is a really big story that isn't getting as much attention because all of the press is, it's being drowned out by like what's going on at UPS, but it's a pretty serious situation. Yellow, it's like a nearly 100-year company. It used to be a yellow cab company, but now it's like the third largest LTL, less than truckload freight company in the United States. It's a union company represented by the Teamsters. We're talking about 30,000 workers, 22,000 of which are Teamster members. And it looks like it's not been officially announced yet, but it looks like on Monday they may go into bankruptcy, which is, this is a part of a long saga of mismanagement at the company, concessions by the union to help prop up the company, and some spurious loans and just a range of things that are amounting to basically the implosion of this company. And it's honestly, it's a tragedy is what we're experiencing. Everyone talks about the UPS contract, Amazon organizing as two of the central mandates of the new Teamsters leadership, of the labor movement. But turning around union freight, which was like the bread and butter industry of the Teamsters up until this industry was just completely reshaped and just destroyed because of deregulation in the 80s. They wanted to turn it around, and this is not a particularly good thing to happen for the pursuit of unionizing this really dire industry with dire conditions for workers.
Absolutely. And of course, like any time there is a unionized business that closes, the corporate answer to that is going to be just that these union workers were simply too greedy. But what does the history of the negotiations between the Teamsters and Yellow over the last 10 to 15 years tell you about the truth value of that argument?
Right. Yeah, that's what we've been hearing out of corporate. Yellow is being pretty pointed with all of their statements saying this is the union and that is doing this to us. But the reality is, I want to just, before I even bring in Yellow, union freight, as I said before, was completely destroyed by deregulation in the 80s. Like, we're talking about 450,000 freight workers represented by the National Master Freight Agreement. And now I think there's under 60,000 union freight members. And we're potentially about to lose 22,000 of those. So not looking good. This is an industry-wide issue for the union. Now, Yellow specifically, according to I'm no Yellow expert. There should be a deep investigation into what's going on at that company, because from what I'm hearing, what I could tell, it's a very, very poorly run company, and it has been for a very long time. Around 15 years ago, it was on the brink of bankruptcy as well. And the union basically gave its pension away, parts of the country, conceded billions of dollars to the company to prop it up, basically. And they also have been suffering through having wages, pensions where they remained or were not converted into 401k plans, no longer defined benefit plans, but defined contribution plans, which are far worse. This union company really was behind the others, even behind some of the non-union companies. So the union conceded quite a lot under Hoffa Jr. And over time, right, we even saw a pandemic era $700 million loan that a federal investigation found was a really big misstep by the federal government, because Yellow was down bad, loaded with debt. But what we're looking at now, the most recent history after all this financial management, is that Yellow was, trying to fix itself, try to remodel itself, restructure, and what's called a change of operations. They basically were taking some of their companies, their carriers that they had bought over the years. Probably, maybe they shouldn't have bought them. They didn't have the money for it, and they were trying to combine them, unite these networks, which, according to the people I've heard, it probably was a good idea. But what that change of operations would include would be forcing some of these union Yellow drivers into dock work, which you might ask, why is that such a big deal? Well, you're making these drivers who maybe have only driving, for their entire career, and you're forcing them into dock work. You're forcing them into this utility position. And this is a concession. Union freight contracts, have a rigidity to them. You do what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to drive, or you're supposed to do dock work for a reason. And Teamsters generally don't want to have this cede this kind of flexibility to the company. And so what happened is the Teamsters said, you're not going to do that. You're going to, if you want to reopen the contract, which expires in 2024, we can do that, but we're not going to let you do this. Yellow, of course, cried bloody murder and was saying, you're going to make us go bankrupt. It's the union, instead of them loading themselves with debt and financially mismanaging the company. Teamsters held strong and said, look, we're not going to give you any more. We're not going to give you any more concessions. This is your fault if this implodes. And they sued the union for $138 million. They stopped paying into the central state's health and welfare and pension funds in June, and they said they wouldn't do it in July. So this is to the tune of $50 million going unpaid, which means that these workers were, about to lose basically their health insurance companies would stop paying for their claims, and also their pensions would no longer accrue. The pension fund extended, gave grace to them at the last minute, and Teamsters were going to strike the company on July 24th if that didn't happen, if the health and welfare funds didn't basically extend the coverage. And so that happened, but now we're looking at bankruptcy. So this is a long even the most recent months, it's been a long sort of history of mismanagement and pointing fingers, but really this is Yellow's fault, and it's a tragedy.
Yes, absolutely. And especially when, this is going to be used against the union, even though, like you said, over the last 15 years, they have given away billions of dollars to this company. And the government has given billions of dollars to this company. And somehow the executives are going to be able to, if they go bankrupt, they're going to be able to go bankrupt. And the media narrative is not going to be, maybe the C-suite executives aren't so smart after all. It's going to be those union workers who maybe a couple of them make six figures. They're just asking for too much, and that's really a shame. So,
No, please.
So let's go ahead and talk about this tentative agreement. That's what's on everybody's mind over the last week or so. The tentative agreement was announced on Tuesday. The highlights went out, and the full contract actually went out pretty soon after that. It was Wednesday or Thursday that the full contract came out. So, now everybody's had at least a couple of days to read the contract. I wouldn't imagine that most of us have read the full thing. I've taken a look at some of the articles, but Teddy, talk to us about what's in the TA and put it in context.
Sure. Yeah. I did read through the whole thing. I am not a lawyer, so I've been talking to a bunch of people to try to fully understand it. I don't know if I'm fully there yet. Probably most of the membership hasn't actually read the whole thing, and they aren't fully there yet. Some of the folks I trust deeply are still trying to understand some of the language because this is complicated stuff. So I just want to preface it that way. There's a lot of stuff in it. I can like go through just quickly some of the most important things. I think a lot of it has already been talked about on this show. For one, they did eliminate the 2-tier driver system, which was an enormous sticking point, which really was the impetus for, electing Sean O'Brien in 2021. And for this contract campaign, that was one of the biggest key issues. So they did eliminate that, which is a huge deal. And this is setting precedent for other companies to delete their own tiers, to abolish their own tiers, such as the auto contracts that are coming up, big 3 auto contract expirations for the UAW. That's a huge part of their mandate. Right. So moving on, we can talk about the raises. There was a general wage increase of $7.50, which there's a lot of talk about wages, but $7.50 general wage increase compared to the last contract. That is very, very good. Some people are making even more, across the contract. Let's see. If we keep going, there's seems to be more going into pensions. We still have to wait on that for the supplementals to come out and see.
Paul Prescott in the chat mentioned that that there's some like really significant pension improvements, like even $1,000 a month more in some cases.
Right. Yeah, I think there's $1,000 increase in the monthly pension payout for 60,000 workers in the central and southern regions. I have to say this is one of the things that I am trying to understand right now, and I'm talking with some folks, so I can't speak heavily on this, but from what I hear, there is a significant increase for a sizable number of the workers. But again, I want to hear from some folks after talking about the supplementals. Full-time jobs is also really a big one, important thing. They created 7,500 new full-time inside jobs, 22 threes they're called according to the contract. And this is a pretty big deal because last time in 2018, they said they wanted to create 5,000 new full-time jobs. It wasn't, however, there were loopholes about what those jobs would be. What is really desired is full-time jobs inside the warehouse, right? And creating these from part-time jobs, giving part-time workers the opportunity to get full-time jobs. And this has just simply not been the case since the last contract. And even further back, some of the wins from 97, from 2002 weren't fulfilled because of basically the previous administration didn't want to fulfill them. They didn't care to, enforce the contract, which is very necessary. Anyway, so there's 7,500 new full-time jobs, which is a big deal. And it doesn't appear like there's any sort of loophole to fill these jobs with other jobs, give it to full-timers. This seems pretty concrete, but it will be up to the union to, I think, enforce it again. Moving on to working conditions, there apparently will be no driver facing cameras, or at least the audio and video functions will be disabled, which is was a big demand last year, especially when we were comparing UPSers were comparing the lack of air conditioning in the package car. Meanwhile, the surveillance device that was being introduced in some package cars, presumably to discipline the drivers. So additional to that is that they can't use some of the other technologies. They can't use them solely for discipline, or they have to use other factors to discipline drivers. There are remaining driver-facing sensors that would be used for training purposes. But yeah, it looks like that these are out. They're not fully out of the package car, perhaps. But this appears to me like a gain. Of course, we all know about the air conditioning and new package fleet starting in next year with purchased package cars. And you can stop me at any point. I'm just going through because there's a lot in this. And these are some of very important wins, and we can get to whether the reaction of the membership. But air conditioning in new package cars, heat shields and ventilation retrofitted within 18 months, basically the entire fleet, This should be helpful to some folks. I mean, I know some people were concerned that it won't affect the entire fleet super soon, but nonetheless, it's better than, from my perspective, it's better than having no air conditioning and no heat shields and no ventilation.
Right. It
as
really
I keep
is
going,
amazing. I mean, just to dwell on that for a second,
Mhm.
that UPS has made it so long without putting air conditioning in their package cars.
Yes.
Like, this is not an expensive thing to do at all. And the idea that they just haven't done it for so long is wild to me.
Yeah.
And just to linger there for a second, and we can continue talking about the specific provisions in the contract, but maybe it's important in the tentative agreement, but maybe it's important to just linger on here for a second, which is this was unthinkable about a year ago. That something as simple as air conditioning would be put in the package car. And you have to ask, why did they get it? And it's what you said earlier in the show, which is they launched a year-long contract campaign. They organized like hell. They mobilized. They educated people. I mean, especially in the past month or so, by mobilizing people, organizing people into practice pickets, rallies, parking lot meetings, really thousands of members going into some of these webinars, especially with the help of Teamsters for a Democratic Union. They built a credible strike threat. And by doing that, that is the only reason they are getting, what appears to be a number of really big gains. Of course, there are questions that some members are having, and I don't know, we can talk about it if you'd like, about they want to win more. But the narrative here, I think, in this TA is that workers fought and they won. And this is going to have reverberations around the labor movement. I think it's really important to linger on the point, and I can continue going through some of the stuff. There's other big important things in this that we can talk about as well, like eliminating forced overtime, the sixth punch specifically. Basically, workers were made to come in. They were able to be forced in on the sixth day. Now that won't be the case. You can work that sixth day if you want to. You can't be forced in to do it. And this was a huge demand by package car drivers specifically. And to be specific about it, package car drivers won't be able to be forced in on a sixth day. I think other workers will be able to. But for package car drivers who were forced in 6 days a week, 14 hours a day, especially during like the height of the e-commerce boom and the pandemic, this is life-changing stuff.
Absolutely.
Now to keep going, Martin Luther King Day is a paid holiday. It does look like there are some provisions to prevent specifically semi-truck driver work called feeder work in UPS, to prevent some subcontracting of that work. That is another field that is far more complicated, and I'm trying to talk to some folks to really understand what's going on there. It looks like they're limiting personal vehicle drivers. Those are the gig drivers. They're not completely gone, but they're limiting the peak season in which they were able to operate, and as well as they're giving priority to part-time workers in order to take those roles with an 8-hour guarantee. Part of the problem with this stuff is that, like, specifically the gig work, is there was kind of like a free-for-all about how these folks could be treated around the country. This is now, it's more concrete about how these guys are going to be treated. Some people had car insurance provided by UPS, others didn't. Now they're all going to get insurance. They're all going to get mileage reimbursements. And so, they're not gone, but it does look like the practice will be more curtailed. And yeah, I may have missed some stuff, and we can dig into some things. And I didn't dig deep into some of the stuff that some UPSers out there probably wanted more from. But overall, what we're looking at is like a contract that is far, far better than 2018, probably far better than those in the past few decades.
Absolutely. And I think that is, you and I were talking yesterday, I think, about Jane McAlevy's article in The Nation. And we felt like that framing was just so good that there really are, genuinely a lot of gains here. One of the things that you didn't mention was the part-timers, that there have
Right.
been a lot of part-timers that have been organizing for 25 an hour, and so 21 an hour definitely falls significantly short of that. But there are people across the country and right here in Alabama who are part-timers working for $15.50 an hour. And so if this contract goes through, or if they if it doesn't go through and they get something better, but just on the $21 an hour, thinking about as of August 1st having a $5.50 an hour raise for hundreds, thousands of workers across the state of Alabama, across the country, that's huge, right? And of course,
it's enormous.
It is. I mean, it is enormous, and the 21 an hour is certainly not enough in places like Los Angeles and San Francisco and New York, and that was a really big part of the 25 demand there. But even what is in the tentative agreement is, I mean, it's a lot better, right? What was the do you remember the increase in the raises from the 2018 contract for comparison's sake?
This is something I've been meaning to do, so I won't be able to tell you right now. I'm trying to do as much comparison as possible. I'm also looking back to 97. So I don't know. What I do know and can tell you is I'm talking to folks who've been here for 20 years or so, and they're like, I've never seen a general wage increase like this. So that I see that as quite big.
Yeah, $7.50 over per hour at a minimum over the next 5 years.
Right. And just apologies to not specifically talk about like the part-time stuff, because that is what the contract talks broke down on July 5th, came back to the table. This is presumably what they were negotiating and to settle on this, right? So $7.50 general wage increase, it could be actually substantially larger than that for some folks,
right?
Because basically what's happening is if you're under 21, if you're a part-timer and you're under $21 an hour, you either get the first year you get $275 immediate raise, or you boost right up to $21 an hour, whichever one's higher. Then part-timers who have longevity, 5 years, 5 to 10 years, 10 to 15 years, there's a scale. You are going to make an extra 50 cents to $1.50 an hour more. So some folks are getting $7.50, some folks are getting more than that. So these wage increases, up to interpretation, whether they're what people, I think we can safely say they're not what people deserve. People deserve far more. Folks probably deserve, people were talking about how these full-time drivers don't deserve $49 an hour. I would say they deserve a lot more than that. I would say the part-timers deserve a lot more than 21 or 25 or 30, but in relative terms, and especially for this labor movement, this time, workers fought and they got enormous gains in this tentative agreement.
Exactly, and that's and there's been a lot of there's been a lot of people echoing some of those things that Jane said in that article from The Nation. Paul mentioned it in the chat today. Paul Prescott, he's been on the show before. He's an organizer for Teamsters for a Democratic Union. I have one of their shirts on right now that I got at Labor Notes last year. And he said that it's important and possible and I think necessary, right, to hold these two things in your head, that this is not, there weren't, as far as we can tell, concessions. The Teamsters didn't give anything to UPS, and they got more than they have at least since 97. And that is because of everything that's happened over the last year. But and if you don't recognize that there was work done, and it was to a degree successful over the last year, because so many people put in so many hours over the last year on this contract campaign. And if you can't recognize that won things at the bargaining table, then, it does kind of become disempowering if people, run around calling this like a sellout contract, right? I mean, there's a difference between we deserve more, and I believe we can get more, and saying it's a sellout contract, right?
Exactly. We talked about this the other day.
Yeah.
I think we can look. I'm talking to members right now, and like tons and tons of members. I think I told you I must have at least talked to over 50 at this point, individual people from around the country, and like what I'm hearing is the predominant thing I'm hearing is this is a solid contract. We won. But there is some sense, right, that we could have won more. And that's a healthy thing to believe. And that's actually incredible that you are like, you won this contract, this tentative agreement. It's not, we still have to see whether it's going to be voted up or down, but to believe that you have the power to have more. That's an incredible thing. For example, as far as I can tell, you're right. I don't see, I guess it depends on your definition of concession, but I don't see any concessions. A lot of folks are talking about one specific thing that it looks like there's a new wage tier. Arguably there's a new wage tier among part-timers because newcomers will be on a progression that will make them seemingly until the next contract permanently, making less than current part-timers. And that's arguably a tier, right? But it's a little bit different than like the 22.4 second tier driving, which is new hires didn't get things right. They didn't have 9.5 rights, the excessive overtime rights, and they got less money than the first tier drivers. That's a concession. Here, one group is getting a bigger boost than the other, but both are getting boosts. And you can debate all day. I'm not going to say one thing or another about whether they should do this or should not do that. I'm not a UPS worker. You guys are the ones who are watching. You guys are the ones who are going to decide whether or not this is enough for you guys. But that we have to be real about what we're looking at. That's not a concession. That's not a concession. And yeah, the folks who I'm talking to, as I said, I'm, looking at this from the outside, there is a feeling that like in my mind, I'm like, what could have been won with a strike? What could this country look like with a strike? Or as Jane McAlevey asked in that Nation article, what would this strike have looked like if they had delayed negotiations to line up with the auto workers contracts, right? The big three contracts that expire in mid-September. What could be, what's the reality of what could have been won? Those are really healthy and really important questions to ask.
Right. How much leverage, a power analysis, like Jane talks about.
Exactly.
Do we have enough power to win more? And I think, I think you and I are, or at least I am, I won't speak for you. I'm sympathetic to the argument that there is more on the table. But also, like you said, that is for the UPS Teamsters to decide, and one of the things that we want to do with bringing you on and over the next week or so is helping people to get educated. And while I'm talking about helping people get educated, there are a couple programs on YouTube that are run by Teamsters that are really good at this stuff, and that's Roswell Hub and the Biweekly Grievance. Both of those run by UPS Teamsters, and on the Roswell Hub, they just put up 2 hours, a 2-hour video of like line by line through the contract with Greg
Kerwood.
So
he's doing God's work.
Doing God's work, absolutely. So definitely check those out if you're a UPS Teamster. We've only been able to get to the highlights right now. And some of the member reactions, and what you're seeing is similar to what I'm seeing. We got this text message last week saying, "Hello, Mason from UPS Local 89 in Bowling Green, Kentucky. I just got word that new hires and anyone under 21 will now receive $21 an hour effective immediately. It seems like the strike will not happen now, and it's so exciting." And then there are people in the like I've seen people in the chat saying more or less, and I apologize, I'm not going to be able to say your name because it's been going by fairly quickly, but saying more or less, this is a good contract, and therefore I'm voting yes. And then there are other people that are saying, it's a good contract, but we could get more, and so I'm voting no.
Right.
And that seems to be kind of where the membership is right now.
And I'll say also, like, I actually sort of polled some of my friends who are online but aren't following this as much as me. I'm kind of like, what are you like? I asked genuinely, like, what are you seeing? Someone who's not me, someone who's paying attention, literally talking to dozens and dozens of workers, and they see stuff. They see some of the critique, they see the excitement, and they're kind of like, okay, I guess there's like, this is kind of a win, and thankfully, I think there's more and more coming out that is just emphasizing that this is a win. And even some of the folks I think who were like had emotional reactions to the highlights, to a first glance at the at the actual contract language. Let's remember, this came out, the highlights came out on Tuesday. I believe the actual language came out on Thursday. It's been a hell of a week, forgive me, but people are having emotional reactions. People are reading it. People don't fully understand it, or they do understand it and they're upset, or they're incredibly happy. So the voting will take place between August 3rd and August 22nd. There's a lot to learn. The UPSers are going to talk to each other, going to learn from each other. They're going to think about this. Thankfully, we have people to kind of put it in perspective, like Jane McAlevey. Also, other folks, I think, out there, Luis Felice Leon has been taken to Twitter to really, put this all in historical context, which is really, really valuable. And people need to understand
I'm
that.
sorry. We're going off the radio now. See you next week, radio folks. Sorry, I kind of. Okay, now we're off the radio. Sorry, I totally lost track of time. And so now we're so yeah, we can wrap this. We can keep going and so continue your thought. I'm sorry.
Oh no worries. I think I mostly completed the thought, which is we need to like understand this in historical context. We need to trust the workers to make their own decisions. I've seen some people take to Twitter or other, and also I hate to keep talking about Twitter because that's not real life, but or it can be partially real life. But folks trying to tell people what they should and should not do, and they're not even Teamsters. I don't know. I'm gonna go ahead and say I'm gonna tell you what to do, which is don't do that. Support the workers and what their decisions are. Right. And I am on the edge of my seat to see what's going to happen. I think it would be disingenuous not to say that there are folks out there who are pushing for a vote no, publicly. And will that succeed? We will have to wait and see. I'm sure there's folks in the chat who are saying vote no, vote yes. This is up to the UPSers to decide, and we're gonna watch. This is not over yet, and I think a lot of media has irresponsibly kind of talked about this. It's a done deal, and unfortunately, what that does is that deleverages sort of all the power that UPSers have built. Of course, it's not all gone, but to say that there's a deal, suddenly the workers are striking rather than UPS striking itself. I think media, we need to keep pushing also on mainstream media to cover this accurately and appropriately.
I agree. I do, a regular segment on a conservative radio show here in the area, and that's kind of how he framed it. It was like, oh, so there's no strike, and I was like, that's up to the members. The members get to vote on this, and it's important that we recognize that because, unlike so many workplaces, there's some amount of democracy in the Teamsters and UPS, and that's super important to emphasize. And so the members do have the members are going to have the final say, and we'll see what happens. And I can certainly understand either one. And so I think that. I don't think that I've got any other questions for you, Teddy. Is there anything else that you wanted to wrap up with?
I think that covers it. At this point, it's a wait and see moment. But I think just to emphasize once again, in this situation, workers fought, and they won. And they could win more, perhaps, whether it's the next contract or it's still this contract. But that's the message I'm taking, and I think that's the message that the broader labor movement should take. When you fight, you win.
Yeah. Teddy Ostrow, host of the Upsurge, freelance labor reporter. You can find his work in These Times magazine, the Real News Network, The Nation, The New Republic, I believe you've got bylines in just about everywhere. Also follow him on Twitter at Teddy Ostrow. Thanks again. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
All right. We went a little bit long there, but I think it was good. Really appreciate him taking the time to talk to us. And we're going to take a really quick break and head into overtime. And we want to
We've got callers on the line already.
We've already got 2 callers. So if you're a UPS Teamster in particular, and you want to call in and talk to us about how you feel about this contract, we're really interested in what you've got to say. So like I said, give us a couple minutes and we'll be right back with overtime.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
we are back on online. We are now off the radio, though. We have freed ourselves from the shackles of the FCC censors, and we're in overtime. That's the second half of our program where we are online only. And we are really excited to hear from some of these folks about from some UPS Teamsters in the chat. If you want to call in, the phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. We've got a couple of segments that we can get to, but also, honestly, I'm just kind of anticipating just taking a bunch of calls. So, Adam, let's go ahead and bring the first caller on the air.
All right.
201.
Y'all pray for me and hope this works right. All right, 201 caller, you are on the air. Tell us where you're calling from and what your name is.
Hey, this is Audrey. I'm calling from North Jersey. I'm a UPS Teamster and Local 177.
Audrey from New Jersey, Teamster Local 177. Thank you for calling in. So what's on your mind?
Yeah, so I just wanted to say I think the TA is a total betrayal of us as UPS workers by the union leadership. In my view, it's a sellout. It is a concessionary contract. I think we shouldn't mince words about it, and I think we should vote it down. I know you all were talking about it earlier, saying that maybe it's disempowering to say that it's a sellout or it has concessions, but I think we should call it as we see it. And I think to say it's a sellout means actually we know we have the power to demand more. And I also think, based on everyone I'm in touch with, what I'm seeing online, I think it's not true that across the board people think this is a solid win. I think a lot of people are rightly upset about a lot of the different issues in it.
Are you noticing a difference in the online reaction and what folks are telling you at work? Are you a driver or a part-timer?
I'm a part-timer. I'm a sorter.
What are people in your hub saying?
I mean, in my hub, it's mixed. People are saying that, well, there is a raise. It's better than the previous contracts. But, I mean, that's a pretty low bar to be just saying because it's better than the blatant sellout contracts under the previous leadership like Hoffa. That means we should accept it. I think a lot of people, it's hard work. It's very hard work, and the cost of living is high. And I've been telling people about the demand for $25 an hour, and people are on board with that. They see that, 21 is honestly a slap in the face. And I have a lot of coworkers who have been there over 20 years, and to have a one-time $1.50 catch-up raise, I think is an insult. So I think, a lot of people want to fight for more. It varies whether people think it's a total sellout or if they think, there are some good, there are some gains in it, but I think people want to fight. And when I've told them we should vote no, I set up a table outside my building the last few days. People are excited about that idea, because we're told we should just accept whatever we're given. We should just trust the union leadership, especially because they're kind of have this militant facade. But, I'm saying no, we should fight for more. And I think people, see why we should do that.
Is there anything? Are there any other provisions in the contract that you and your the folks that are involved at your hub in trying to get people to vote no? Is there anything other than the wage increase in particular, or is it really the 25 is kind of the animating thing?
So also I will say I have been involved with Teamsters Mobilize. I know you all have had Jose on before. So yeah, I've been working with them to push this demand for 25, but definitely it's larger than just the wages, and larger than just, part-time issues. I think it was mentioned earlier, but there is this new, yet another tier system with this contract where the new part-timers are only going to reach 23 by the end of the contract. And I think we shouldn't accept that. We shouldn't say, yeah, it's fine for our future coworkers to be only, getting 50 cents a year raise. And I mean, in terms of other issues like subcontracting and PVDs, we're on like the IBT materials of like a strike issue, but that's in this contract. Right now, it's just saying, part-timers get the opportunity to use our own cars to deliver packages. And I think, this was mentioned earlier too, but only the RPCDs won't be forced for the 6 punch for overtime. Everyone, like part-time workers, inside workers, combo, air, other full-time workers, like we're still going to be forced the 6 punch. So, yeah, it's good for the drivers. I'm glad for them, but we should be fighting for all UPS workers. There's other things too, like in terms of the issues with the drivers. It's good that there are some ACs added, but I think we shouldn't accept just like 29,000 or just the new trucks. We're in the position with these negotiations to demand a lot more, and they came to that agreement pretty quickly. Those non-economic demands, like, a while ago. Just a few other big issues I see in this contract, it says UPS can shift to a 7-day work week to compete with Amazon, and all they have to do is inform the Teamsters. Like, we shouldn't accept that. Working people in this country fought for a weekend, and now we're just giving that up. One other thing is, outside my building a few months ago, I met some feeder drivers out of Minneapolis. They're running this campaign called No COLA, No Contract, fighting for cost of living adjustment for the pensions, because there isn't that right now.
Right.
So if you look at they have some graphs on their website. It's pretty crazy how much you lose every year with your pension benefits as inflation goes up. And that's another thing. I mean, the union leaders decided, we're not going to fight for this. And I've heard from other people who are kind of combing through the tentative agreement, right now and in the last few days, that there's a lot of other issues. So I think, we shouldn't accept this. We should absolutely fight for more.
Yeah, and so I guess I'm interested in, you were pushing back at, as is totally your right, and it's, I'm totally willing to accept, that's where you're coming from. But, do you see where there are, folks that, like Jane McAlevey, but not only her, the UPS Teamsters that are, coming out and saying that this is, that we don't want to call it a sellout contract or anything because of the, that it's kind of disempowering and maybe, doesn't recognize enough some of the work that's been done over the last year, and even by the bargaining committee.
To that, I would say we should, yes, there's the context and the history of the Teamsters leadership being totally openly corrupt, the mob and all that, and, forcing contracts on people. But I think we shouldn't just look at the past and how negotiations have gone in the past, because in comparison to that, you could call a lot of things a victory. I think we should be looking at what actually have UPS workers been fighting for, for decades, but also especially in the last 5 years since the last contract, and how much kind of leverage and power did we have and do we still have in these contract negotiations to fight for a lot. And I think in that context, in the context of we've had a lot of demands as UPS workers, and then, in these negotiations, the union leadership did an NDA. They kept us in the dark, just like previous union leadership, even though they said they wouldn't. They reached an agreement that, the CEO had said is a win-win-win. Like President Biden said he's very happy with this agreement. We've worked, the workers and the employer have worked out their differences. That should be very, very concerning to us. They're trying to tell us that basically like we're equals sitting at a table, And it's only fair, like that UPS gets to make billions off our labor so long as they spend a little more on wages and benefits, put a few more ACs in, and then, a few ACs in to start, and then that, we should be happy. I mean, in my view, like the way I'm looking at this is, and I've seen this in the chat too, like there's no fair contract between UPS and us as UPS workers. There's no, like that slogan, a fair day's pay for a fair day's work, does not exist, because the only way that UPS and every other corporation runs and makes profit is by exploiting us. I mean, we all know, like they pay us as little as they can to squeeze as much as they can out of us. And that's how, like, the whole system is set up. We live in this capitalist society. The capitalists own all the companies and everything we need to produce the things we need to live. And so we're forced to work in horrible conditions and for low pay just to be able to survive. And, in order to maintain this whole system, the status quo, like the government, I think, is just basically a machine that serves those capitalists for them to keep their power. Like we all saw that last year when Biden and then the Democrats and the Republicans in Congress worked together hand in hand, including AOC, who's now coming out in New York and saying, working class has to fight back. Like they all work together to crush the rail strike. So I think given this larger situation in these negotiations, like right now, what we're going to do, how we fight is going to affect our lives for the next 5 years, but also more broadly, in the labor struggle. So we should fight as hard as we can to force UPS to give us as much as possible. I think that includes striking. And the union leadership was talking a big game about going on strike. And then they didn't do it. And that's actually not that surprising, because kind of this whole time, O'Brien and the rest of leadership have been saying, like, if we strike, it's because UPS is striking themselves, right? Like, it's not something that workers ever want to do. It's only if we're backed in the corner. And we should take this situation into our hands. I think we need to vote this down. I think we need to push for a strike too, because honestly, I think if we vote it down, which I hope we do, probably what the union leadership wants to do is just go back to negotiate. That's what they did when the ABF workers voted down that their local supplement. I don't know if you all followed that. I think for me, like we need to see this larger context, and just, I know I've been talking for a bit, but just to say like a few more things. I think for everyone who's watching this fight, including UPS workers, obviously we're in this, but for everyone else, like, you have to take a stand. I think if you're saying that this is a good TA that we should accept, you are fighting with the company, with the government, which was pushing to have no strike, with the union leadership, which I think is selling us out. So I think we have to take a stand. And just to say, tomorrow, Teamsters Mobilize is hosting a webinar about a no vote campaign, why we think we should vote no, how we want to work with as many people as possible to vote this thing down and push for more. I know we all have a lot of different ideas and some disagreements, even, on is this actually a sellout, or how do we view the union leadership? But I think for all of us who can agree that this is not enough, we have to come together. We have to fight together. So if you go to teamstersmobilize.com, we have a webinar at 3 p.m. Eastern in English, and then 5 p.m. Eastern in Spanish. That's, those are my thoughts. Thanks so much for having me.
Yep. Aubrey from North Jersey. Appreciate the call. And I did want to respond really quickly to just, some of the sentiment in the chat. And there's, one brother, I've been at UPS for 33 years. These part-timers crack me up. If you don't like the pay, then go find another job that pays $21 an hour with a pension and full-time benefits. Oh yeah, you won't find one. And, it's certainly true that UPS is, industry leading in a lot of ways, but it's not because people just kind of took it and said, yeah, this is the best that any corporation is willing to give me, so that's all that I deserve, right? And I do hope that even people that are willing to, that are going to be voting yes on the contract, I do hope that, that there can be some amount of mutual respect between folks, because and it's also, it's not even necessarily true that there's nowhere else. I saw an article yesterday that Uline in Wisconsin is filling 120 jobs starting at $29 an hour. There is a Smucker's factory that is opening soon in Gadsden, Alabama, that's starting $23 an hour with health benefits from day one. Obviously, they're not going to have a pension, but, you're starting to get kind of comparable compensation there. But let's bring on the next caller, 714.
Buenos dias, gentlemen. Buenos dias, Adam. Buenos dias, Jake. I don't know how hard. It's pretty hard to go after obvious, like trying to do a set after James Brown just left the stage, or Prince. It's pretty good. But one thing that you guys mentioned was the pension. I don't know. Teddy's out in the East. I don't know where Paul Prescott's at in the country, but I'm out here in the West. And I'm sorry if I want to be a little bit emotional, but out here in our West, our pension is good. Our pension is solid. We've never risked investing in stocks with a high risk and a high reward, like other areas did. Central States, New England Pension Fund. I don't know where they invested their money, but we all know those two pensions out there are failing. I think critical, I forget the terminology the government has, critical and failing or something like that. But ours out here in the West, it's strong. We're fully funded. We have enough in reserves to pay the current retirees and the future retirees that are coming in. So why is it that our pension has to be frozen? Why aren't we getting any new contributions in our pension? And this is not just in the West. There's some other areas in the country too, where they're getting no new contribution into their pension.
Right.
So that is a problem. Once the membership gets a hold of it, out here in the West, believe me, all these full-timers, they do say stuff about the part-timers, because I've heard it. I've heard it for so long. But one thing they do care about is their pension. And once all that, we see the supplements, because they've been hiding those supplements out here in the West from us, a revolt's going to happen, because you cannot freeze our pension. Why? Should we help other Teamsters? Yes, we should. But should there be no new contributions for 5 straight years because we accepted another 5-year contract? And Jane McElvaney, we were mentioning, I call her La Maestra. She advocates in that article that she just published in The Nation, she talks about she doesn't agree with the 5-year contract. Right? So our pension has to be frozen for 5 years? Come on now. Come on. And we're talking about TDU. Where's TDU at? If this was Hoffa, they'll be up in their outward fighting for this. But because you wanted a seat at the table, you ain't a reformer no more. I apologize. There's some good people in TDU, some great people. But guess what? You want to have a seat in the table? Guess what? Sit there and take it now, because you chose to do that because you wanted a seat at the table. So to me, they've done some great work. They do some great educational stuff. But this decision for them to support O'Brien, well, they knew about O'Brien and what he did in 2013, and they knew what O'Brien said about them in one of the New England states. I want to maybe say New Hampshire, but I could be wrong. They do know, but they chose to have some sort of agreement with them, and they ran with them. Now we're talking about wages, right, for part-timers, for new hires. So if you look at the 2018 contract, in 2013, the first year of that contract, a new hire got $13. The second year, they got $14. The third year, they got $14.50. The third year they got $14.50. The fourth year they got $15. The last year of the contract, they got $15.50. Overall, they got $2.50. Let's compare this to our contract right now. A new hire will come in at 23. Will come in at 21, excuse me. And then 21.50. And then 22. Then 22.50. Then 23. So for all this talk about Hoffa, and then Hoffa was a business unionist, don't get me wrong, but he got $2.50 for a new hire. This contract only gives a new hire $2. Now, a $21, could it go far in Alabama? Yes. But guess what's going to eat at it? Inflation.
Right.
And then we talk about two tiers. We have a multi-tier system. Now, for a new package car driver, I have my notes right here. For a new package car driver, right? The first year they go at 23, and then 24, 25 the third year, 30, 75 the fourth year, and then top rate. Top rate, I don't know what it'll be at, but they'll go at top rate. For a 22-3, a full-time inside job, they go at 23, 24, 25 the third year, 28 the fourth year, and then they'll top off at top rate at $35.94. Isn't that a two-tier wage system right there? They're both full-timers, but one is getting a bigger increase at the end of the fourth year than a 22-3. And then we still have a 3 hour and a half daily guarantee for part-timers. Me and others throughout this country, when we had our contract proposals, proposed a 4-hour guarantee. Some probably put 5, because the operation could run at 5.
Right.
And so some operations run at 5 hours. My operation kind of runs at like the 5-hour mark. But we shouldn't be accepting these 3.5-hour guarantees when the preload, there's a little bit more crunch because the drivers have to leave. They try to cram as much work. Well, they have to cram all that work to get that work out. They cram all that work for those 3.5 hours. That's unacceptable in my eyes. And then you got Article 40 for the air workers. The preamble is still there. What said that the supplements were super. I think it says the supplements will supersede the national masters. I wish my friend Matt Coverhody was here, because he's the more of an Article 40 expert, but that didn't get touched. So these $21, yeah, it'll go far, but inflation will eat at it. So to me, I'm voting no. I'm recommending a no vote, and Audrey talked about the Teamster Mobilize. We are going to have a webinar, tomorrow. So I hope everybody could join. If you're on Instagram, it'll just be just Teamster Mobilize. But we have a Twitter. It says Teamsters, and then Mobilize is spelled Mobilz. So, and then another 5-year contract. A 5-year contract is going to lock us in for $30 billion, which is cool. You know what it does too? Locks us out of new money that UPS is going to get. Because if at the end of in January of 2024, the annual report, right, for UPS comes out, and we find out they made $12 billion in profit revenue, probably another $100 billion or $90 billion in profit revenue. And then next year at this time, when the second quarter earnings come out, and they made around $3 to $4 billion, we've lost big money. We left big money on the table. We've lost big money on the table. And then we talk about the ACs in the car. We had that brother out there in Arizona basically have a heat stroke, I think it was, when he was walking. And everybody's seen it, and the Ring camera catches, and he's walking to deliver a package. You're going to think UPS saw that and be like, dude, we got to do damage control. Right. And when the Teamsters went in there and said, we want AC, you guys got it. Whatever you guys want, you guys got it. Because why? That image spoke 1,000 words.
Right.
That image alone. But guess what? These hubs where all the part-timers and the inside workers work, you walk in there, it's like walking in the sauna. Within 5 minutes, you feel that heat just bear hug you. And if you don't know how to work properly, because you're trying to impress the boss, if you're a new hire and you're thinking you're Superman, you're loading your first hour, you're like 3 walls in, like, yes, I got it. The second hour, the third hour, that's when the problems happen, because you're working yourself to exhaustion. You know, we still have no proper ventilation. Just because you move a trailer a couple inches off the dock door to get some air in, that's proper ventilation. I mean, we need some fans, or we need something out here in these hubs, you know. So that's my argument why we should vote no.
Appreciate
and
your
then
call,
top rate
Jose.
for
Do what?
No problem. Thank you. No, I was going to say that even I don't know what top rate for drivers is going to be. It'll probably be around 49, maybe.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's what it says. 49.
Yeah. So we know how inflation is. That's going to eat that. That's giving that's no real purchasing power. All these drivers, you know what? They've worked hard. They earned what they've got.
Yeah.
But guess what? What you could do 10 years ago, you probably won't be able to do it now. Because why? Inflation is going to eat at it and eat at it. And then if they jack up another interest rate hike on us again, it's not going to be good. To me, it's a no vote. It has to be a no vote. And for all these drivers say, oh, go find a job somewhere else. No, we're not going to find a job somewhere else. This is our career. This is our home. And we're going to fight as hell to make it a livable house for everybody inside. So if you enjoy talking that smack about part-timers, hey buddy, why don't you go into management? You're already a bootlicker for management anyways.
Appreciate the call, Jose, as always. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for this space. Gracias.
Absolutely.
I like Jose. Jose got some passion to him.
He does. Jose is actually probably one of the, Jose and Will are one of the Teamsters, are two UPS Teamsters that have been on, that have been viewers of the show for probably the last year. They've been around for a while, and we really appreciate them.
Shout outs to Jose.
Shout outs to Jose. That's right. Let's bring on another caller. Let's bring on 941.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, 941. I can hear you. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
All right, my name is Corey, and I'm from Local 79. That's out of Tampa, specifically Sarasota County.
Cora.
And I've been working at UPS. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Corey from Tampa. Appreciate your call. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I got to top the first two callers who were awesome. I'm a full-time driver. I've been at UPS for 10 and a half years. And I think one of the most difficult things is that every hub has different managers. Every hub has different weather. Every hubs have different economies. So, you know, everybody's going to have, you know, where their complaints are. As far as pay or harassment, or, you know, whatever you value more on the contract. And I won't focus too much on part-time because we've already had two part-time callers coming in. And they've pretty much nailed a lot of the issues. I'll only mention one thing on the part-timers because that was like kind of the whole reason why we were kind of threatening to strike, was to stand up for them. Because I had to do 6 years of part-time before they even let me go full-time, and then I had 4-year progression, so I didn't hit top rate until like last year. So it took me 10 years.
Right.
And to say I don't have any type of, like, I don't want to like downplay it or anything, like a PTSD from preload, because it was rough. It is not a fun time, and especially when I got in at $9 an hour, they would start us at 5:20 a.m. Say you got to unload two 51-foot semis by yourself, then do e-regs, and then you're out with maybe like what, $27. And I was like, holy cow! I had to drive 40 minutes to work. That's covering my gas. So the first couple of years, I was like, do I even want to stay here? And, you know, one of the only reasons why I kind of first got hired was my uncle was a driver and always bragged about his paychecks. And I was like, well, I can do, you know, other jobs to see what I'm good at. And then if they eventually let me drive, I can always proceed forward. But what about the people who don't want to drive? You know what I mean? So I think the more full-time positions for warehouse workers is absolutely crucial, because, you know, maybe they don't want to work some, you know, crappy second job, because you're not getting OT when you're working two jobs either. I was doing 40 hours at Target, and 20 hours preload, I'm working 60 hours a week with no OT. So it gets kind of tiring, year after year after year of doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would. It gets really tiring. So I understand, like, full. Even when I get back to the building, I'll help unload my truck if I see the local sort person kind of overwhelmed, because our building is quite understaffed for local sort, so they're always kind of asking drivers to help out at night. So I was like, I never forget where I come from, so I'll help unload my truck and do what I can to help. As far as one of my main things that I like about the contract, there's a lot of disappointments as well. I'm pretty neutral as far as voting, is how ragged the 224 drivers have been ran. Like, I mean, they work those guys to the bone, and they don't have a choice. And so that's why we were saying that 9-5 language and 8-hour requests, that 224 was like the worst thing in history to put, at UPS in general. That's why we all kind of voted no in 2018, but then they still pushed it through, because I had some drivers who were retiring, and they're like, you guys are going to regret that decision for the rest of your life. But we got rid of it. So I thought that was a huge win, because, when you're coming at $20 an hour and they're asking a lot of these old timers, like, take Friday off, whatever. We're just going to work this 20-hour, person that makes half and give them all the work. Because the old timers like, I'll work only a couple days a week. I've already made my money. Right. So I don't like the treatment that they get. And I also want to clarify for them, if you are current 22-4, when you, when you go to your new progression rate, let's say, you're at the 3 years, which was what, 30.75. For that final year before you hit top rate, you will get that 275 general wage increase. And it was mainly what Jose stepped on, is as the new hires for part-time and new hires for full-time, they do get those lower wages, especially for the 21 to 23. For part-timers, everybody thought maybe the language would have been everybody got bumped up to 21, and then we got the 750 on top of that. But no, they're like, oh, we're going to put the general wage increase first and then move people up to the 21, unless the 275 pushes you over 21. So I think that was like the main language that was just very kind of irritating, which if that would have switched, I bet you a lot of people, besides the pension issues.
Right.
But is there, and I think you guys also brought up, I think Jose already mentioned it, but like the raises that we got in the last contract. So there's like weird scenarios that happen, which is always confusing with pay, is when I started driving was like May 4th of 2018. So that was before that contract went through. So they had that waiting period where we didn't have the contract done for 4 or 5 months. And then I was at 1875 for the beginning of my progression in 2018. And so when they bumped it to 21, I ended up getting like a $3,500 retro check, because they owed me all the money up till 21, starting in August 1st, because it took them so long to get the contract done. Right. So I got the back pay for that. But then because I was on the previous contract, every August I was also getting their raises. But since my progression was May, I was getting my progression raise, which would go to a set amount, and then I was getting random August raises on top, but they did not stack. So my big thing is whether or not those current 224 drivers that go to RPCDs, whether or not those will work the way it did with me, where they do get the August raises, but they don't stack with the progression. So I do like that they're getting the 275, but I want to know whether or not that stacks so that they can get that full 750. Like if they just started driving now, they'll go from the 23 to 25.75, but I want to know if they're getting the 70 dollar before they hit top rate, because that's another 250 right there. So that's like, I kind of just want to stand up for those 224 drivers.
Appreciate it. Corey from Tampa, thanks for the call.
Yep, thanks.
Let's bring on another one. 731. Adam, let's bring 731 on the air. And
hello.
731, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, appreciate you having me on. This is Jeff Moore, the Teamster teacher from TikTok, and I am from Jackson, Tennessee. It's just West Tennessee.
Jeff, thanks for calling in. So what are your thoughts on the contract and anything else that that you think is important to talk about during as people are kind of mulling over the TA?
Yeah, so one of the main things I feel like, just to preface before, because I actually have a few contract language things I did want to bring up on the show, but I think it's important to, just before I get into that, I just want to just champion the whole idea of voting to everybody. And for anyone that's listening, like, if you're a yes voter, if you're a no voter, like, you are still a brother. So, like, I see a lot of attacking and whatnot online, and, like, first thing is, like, we got to remember we're all on the same team. You can be a yes voter and a no voter and still be pro-union all the way, in my personal opinion. So, like, before I dive in, I just want to say that, like, language is kind of where I come from on my stance, and education. So, like, I won't even mention if I'm voting yes or no, because I think that's irrelevant. But I think the details of the language are almost, if not as important as the money, because as we've seen in the past with this company, when it comes to a language battle, they tend to find the loopholes and win a lot of arguments over the union members, just because they're so good at working through the language and finding loopholes. Their lawyer staff is probably absolutely insane with how many and what they're paid to do to go in there and figure out those loopholes. But for me personally, like, just an example of that language barrier, and I actually really appreciate what the negotiating team did. I do believe that they went in there and attacked this thing, and they went in there and they got a very great contract. But there are a couple things that I am concerned about, if you don't mind me sharing a couple.
Absolutely.
So one of the things I have an issue with is the scheduling for the Tuesday through Saturday work. So in the current contract, they're only allowed to have like 25% of the routes in on a Saturday. And so right now, under the new agreement, according to what I'm seeing, there's no limit to the number of Tuesday through Saturday routes they can have. And all of the regular package car drivers from this current contract, which would include myself, can be forced into a Tuesday through Saturday schedule if they can't fill it with what they have already. So that's like something I feel like language-wise, in my personal opinion, it's blurry and can be interpreted a couple different ways. But for me, it's looking like that is not good for the membership, as well as just a small language thing for me. The elimination of the 4-6 punch was a very big strike issue. But in the language, it mentions regular package car drivers. It doesn't say anything about combo drivers, air drivers, part-time. So I just wonder how that's going to play out, and if that's something that has been noticed by anyone else.
Yeah, that sounds like that's going to be an important issue, and being able to enforce the language that you do have is so important. That's something that I've seen stressed on the Roswell Hub and the biweekly grievance. Them talking about we can have any language at all in the contract, but if we don't force it in our locals, if we don't enforce it, then they're gonna abuse it and ignore it and all that kind of stuff. So
absolutely, and they're very, very good at I'm sure at the table they're even figuring out how to work the language in their favor, right, for both sides. And here's another one I'm bringing up that I'm not so sure if everyone has read into. Maybe I'm looking into this wrong, but when it comes to the upgraded version of the ride-alongs, where the management are able to do ride-alongs, they have to give us now a 24-hour notice, which is great. Let us know, hey, tomorrow we're going to ride with you for X reason. The problem is that I'm not seeing where the language has been updated to give them a certain amount of ride-alongs. per year, which right now, we have a limit on how many times. So at one of my most popular TikToks was on our lunch break. I was on like my 5th ride along of the year, and I made a TikTok about it. And after that TikTok, I filed a grievance against the company saying that, hey, here's the spot where it says you can only do 2, and no one else can get back on the truck with you until this grievance has been heard. So I haven't had any problems since, and I worry if like this new language, I don't see anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I think that's interesting. I hadn't heard anybody talking about that. I really appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah. I mean, just some of the things I've been digging through, and ultimately, here's the, if I could close with anything, and I'm not trying to lean one way or the other. If anything, I just want to reach out to as many people as I can, educate them on what's in here, what's not in there. I would like to, I think our Department of Secretary of Labor, Julie Sue, when asked about this, said it best, the people, and I want to put emphasis on the people, will decide what's best. So like, I don't care how you vote, but get your ballot and send it in, but also do a little bit of homework beforehand. This is like, this is a true, if anything, this is as true as democracy gets right here, right? We don't have to worry about an electoral college superseding voting process. Like you, as a member, and this is why I champion unions, can do your own homework. This directly applies to you, and do your homework, cast your vote. Just know what you're voting for.
Can you tell us what is actually? Do you know the procedure for voting? What that's going to look like this year?
I have heard about electronic ballots. However, in the past, I know that there is a mail-in ballot, and the ballots are coded. I'm told that it's incredibly difficult to falsify. I know that I have read through the recent reports on the voting, and they do post those by detailed percentage by local. You can even go in and see what the percentage of the membership that showed up versus and then the percentage of the membership that voted yes and then no by local. So like as far as I know for sure, you'll definitely get a mail-in ballot. It'll be coded. You got to send it back in, and then I believe they're saying August 22nd. If I've heard that right, will be the deadline for that.
Jeff from Tennessee, thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Yep. And everybody on the line, just wanted to, let you know that we see y'all. We're trying to get to everybody. The queue has been, and I think a lot of y'all have been calling in. Geez, is this number the number of people that has tried to call in? 226, and it's told them they're busy? Is that the number? I don't know. But a lot of people have tried to call in, and the line has been busy. That's because our line only takes 5 callers at a time. So, but we are going to have to wrap at 12:30 or thereabouts. So we really appreciate your patience. Appreciate those of you that are hanging on the line to talk to us. And let's go ahead and bring on the next caller. 818. 818 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yes, this is Lenny Powers from Southern California. How y'all doing?
I'm good, Lenny. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Just kind of taking in all of what's happening within labor. I mean, we're at a big moment right now. I mean, we have, just along with the writer strike, and the SAG-AFTRA strike, and then this, tentative agreement with the Teamsters. I find myself, kind of taking in what's going on and the historic nature of it all, and it's quite exciting. But I really do want to address the concerns around the press release, if you will, of calling this tentative agreement a historic win. I mean, and yes, it is a historic win, but there's also two truths could exist at the same moment. where this is a historic win, but at the same time, I mean, wages have not grown for the past 40 years, you know, on average, you know, if we're looking at, you know, wage stagnation. So, you know, I do feel, you know, I understand the frustration, especially from these part-timers when you're looking at, you know, something being released and it's, you know, it's stating, you know, these are historic wins, and, you know, and it's, you know, it's not, you know, all hype. I mean, it's true, but then again, I mean, we are living in a time where wages haven't kept up with the cost of living in, you know, in my lifetime at least. So what I want to bring to that is the fact that we have to understand that sometimes when we are in a fight, because these are fights, you know, and lives are going to be, you know, greatly impacted when we look at, you know, possibility of strikes. We have to look at the socioeconomic positioning of certain individuals versus, you know, of others. So if we're looking at a person that's on the higher end of, you know, of the wages within a contract and what, you know, they have to win versus what, you know, an entry-level position person would win within this contract, you know, that's huge, and we have to take that all into consideration when we are, you know, demanding strikes. But at the same time, I mean, if you look at, you know, industries, you know, across the board, you know, capital right now is hurting, but yet they've grown so large through monopolization and mergers and just being so large that my only fear is that what's happening with the WGA and, you know, SAG-AFTRA at this point, you know, is the possibility of UPS to just wait this thing out because they have, you know, a big enough, you know, purse that they, you know, can do that? Would it be appealing to workers that, you know, work temp jobs to take these scab positions? And in my estimation, I could see that, you know, that might be more suffering than what we could, you know, more than we can anticipate when we do call for these strikes. And yes, I believe that labor is in a good position at the moment, but it's not in a position where it could overall weather the, you know, the pressures of capital that's going to be put on these workers that are going to be on those picking lines. And I just want, like, and it's not to say that we can't grow even larger. I think that we can utilize this moment to springboard into larger labor growth and more participation within organized labor participation, and in turn start organizing other companies such as the Amazon drivers, so that when contracts come around in the future again, that we could, in a larger number, hold capital's feet to the fire and put that pressure on them in a larger way. I just believe that, especially when you're involved in online activism and online community, when you get, because we also have to understand that we may get caught up in our own silos and our own echo chambers, and almost, you know, feeling as if the moment is larger than what the greater number of the populace would see it as. So in that sense, it has to be looked upon as in a strategic matter. Like, do we have the leverage and in the positioning within the moment to make the biggest impact that we can, or should we take what is offered and then recoup and gather and build our forces even larger so that we could make a greater impact within the future? And I understand, I mean, you know, if we look at, you know, what can be done with what we have, I mean, I just feel as if we're in a transition period where, yes, the labor activity, labor participation, and labor in itself is been pushed in the forefront and in and in the limelight to and spotlighted within society more. But at the same time, is it big enough to weather the powers and the purses of capital? And that's kind of my question that I really would love to like get a sense of where you all stand on that. And I'll take the answer off the call. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Lenny. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. And that's the right question to be asking. The question absolutely is not. The question is not, are we being paid more than Amazon workers? The question is not, what is it? Am I being greedy? Right? Those are just silly questions to ask. The question is, do we have enough power to take this, to take more from the company? And I would lean towards yes. I would lean towards that potentially there's more on the table, and I think that there are a lot of people that even that are going to be voting yes that would agree with me that there would be more on the table potentially. The only question would be, is the membership unified enough to demand more at this time? Because the only way that the saying there is more on the table is not the same as are the Teamsters, UPS Teamsters, like unified enough to take it, right? And that's what that's what would have to be done is to take it. And I would certainly hope so that even and I would think so that even the people that vote yes, if the majority comes back with a no vote, I would have faith in my sisters and brothers in the Teamsters that they would support what the majority says. So those are kind of my thoughts. Adam, I don't know if you have anything else to add to
that. Not really, to be honest with you. I've been trying to engage with the chat a little bit, and I think you're on to it, honestly.
Yeah, and well, I mean,
I just want to say, a couple. I guess what I would say is, you're right about it takes a power analysis, and I am not in a position to be able to determine whether or not the Teamsters can pull off a strike, should they vote down this contract, nor will I say as a non-UPSer whether someone should vote yes or no. As I mentioned earlier, you can call that being wishy-washy or call it whatever you want to call it. It's just, if someone were telling me how to vote on my contract and they were not working alongside me and they were not governed by said contract, I would take their opinion with a giant grain of salt.
Exactly.
So, I think for me what's important is that these workers, these brothers and sisters are having this dialogue, and I hope that they can, win this struggle, whatever that win looks like. And for some people, this TA is what that win looks like, and for some people it's not. And so that is what it is, and that's the beautiful thing about our movement is we as workers have to push and pull and organize and have these conversations with each other. And so I'll just finish by saying, it's not my position as an IATSE member or as a part of the Valley Labor Report to say yes or no. I'm just not going to do that. I don't think that's really my place, but I'm glad that as a labor radio program, we've provided some space for folks, to have those conversations. Can you make recommendations? Yes, I think you can make recommendations. I have my thoughts about it. I think a strike is the most powerful weapon that we have as working people. And so if you are able to pull off a strike in these sort of conditions and extract more concessions, then by all means, I mean, I think that's what we can and should do when it's possible. But again, I'm not seasoned enough inside that movement to know particularly whether or not that team, this is the fight that's going to lead to a strike and a successful strike and all that. I can't say that. Hindsight's 20/20. So again, I'm glad that folks are having the debate, and I'm glad that folks, are seeing the Valley Labor Report as a platform. I think we try to be fair with folks. We've got vote no folks and vote yes folks, and
we really,
if you're a worker and you work for a living and you're working for somebody else, you're my brother and you're my sister, and it doesn't, however this thing shakes out, there will still be a lot of organizing to do and a lot of work to do. So,
we're going to try to move through the last calls a little bit more quickly. But before we get to another call, Sci-Fi, I wonder, you told us during the break that you were a FedEx driver.
I was.
And so I'm interested in your thoughts, hearing from Teddy and hearing from the callers and seeing the chat, as somebody who has, you don't work at UPS, you don't work at FedEx anymore, but I'm interested in what you're thinking.
Well, it's a relief hearing the things that's being brought up in this TA, because there are things that I personally went through, and I'm like, oh man, this is like saving grace. I can only imagine all of my friends that still work at FedEx hearing about this, and they're probably going to be like, well, hey, if UPS can get this, why can't we? Which is great. The AC in the package trucks, people don't understand how big that is as a thing. Just especially here in Alabama,
right,
where it's humid. It's like the swamps of Vietnam. It's just insane. Getting just proper airflow into the truck. Things that you hear these things, you're like, okay, that's nothing. No, that makes or breaks your day. My truck personally, I had a little vent system that faced that was on the driver's side of the truck. So when I drove, air would come in through that vent and kind of cool off my legs a little bit. The only problem with that is that it was welded open. So in the wintertime, I'm getting cold air blasted on my legs all the time.
Right.
So if you could get some kind of temperature control, better pay, of course. I'm really happy. I think the caller, who I believe was from South California, what he was saying is, how he was saying, whether you vote yes or no, it's important to realize that it's pretty much for you guys. You're all in this together. I hate to quote High School Musical like that, but you really are. You are all in this together, and you guys are. It's all for the betterment of you. What can you get? If you can get more, try not to leave anything on the table.
Yeah.
And even the back and forth, people were saying how some people have been there they've heard of people being there for 33 years talking about, part-timers want this, part-timers want that. Just because it's better now than when it was doesn't mean you should diminish somebody trying to make things better, Because right now, you're like, oh, it's amazing. It wasn't like this back in 85.
Right.
But guess what? Now it's 2023.
Yeah.
In
and UPS is making more money.
Yeah. And people are going to be like, wow, at least it's not like how it was in 2023. So it's important to just realize that nobody's really trying to be greedy here. One thing I've learned about a lot of jobs, especially physical labor jobs, a majority of the people are never trying to be greedy. They're just trying to get what they're owed and feel appreciated. And that's a big thing.
Especially the workers are not trying to be greedy, but the people at the top who are making, let's remember, the UPS CEO makes as much as a full-time package car driver does in a year, which is, these are the people that folks outside of UPS, they really, oh man, you no degree and you're making $42 an hour. Wow. You got it so good, you should just accept concessions. That's that's literally some of the stuff that you'll hear from people outside of UPS. But you never, ever, ever hear that about Carol Tomei making as much in a day as these people make in a year. Over 300-something times what the average employee makes. And that is really the thing to if we want to talk about greed and we want to talk about people getting more than they deserve, like Carol Tomei Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. These are the people. Absolutely not the people who are busting their ass getting our packages to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so like I said, we have 20-30 minutes left, and then we're going to have to dip. We've got and let's try to get through as many calls as we can. So people that are on the line, if you would, and still feel free to call in if you haven't been able to make it in, and we'll just keep taking calls until we end. But if you're on the line, be ready to talk to us about one or two things that you want to say about the TA, and then any comments you have about the conversations that have been happening on the show, and then we'll let you go. So with that, let's bring on 609. 609 area code. You've been hanging on for 30 minutes. We appreciate your patience. 609 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Name is Mike Sorry from Local 177 in New Jersey.
Mike from Local 177. Second caller from 177. So what are your thoughts?
The 177.
The 177.
Respect on it.
The 177. Yes, sir. All right. So as a steward, understand that the saying goes, the language is the language is the language. So it's important that everybody actually reads the agreement, your supplement, and the master agreement before coming to any conclusion. Me personally, our supplement was released yesterday, so I've been reading both the national and the supplement. It's also important to understand that we did not vote to go on strike. We voted to authorize Sean and the team to strike us if a fair contract wasn't reached. Not the best historic contract, if a fair, that's what it said on the paper that they all voted on and signed. Didn't say historic, said fair, right? So they believe it's a fair contract. That's why they gave it to us to vote on it. So the question, right, on the vote is, yes or no, is it worth striking and losing pay and your benefits, your medical benefits, because we have to work to get our benefits, right, for an indeterminate amount of time? Because once you strike, you don't know how long that strike's going to last. You could easily say, it's only going to be a couple of days, guys. Don't worry about it. No one can say that. It could go weeks, months. Then the company's losing business, which guess what? That means they don't need as many of us to come back. So as far as the part-timers go, that should scare the you-know-what out of them, because how it works, I don't know if you guys are aware of this. I'm relatively new to your chat here, to your podcast. But if the full-timers like myself get laid off, right, we can bump the part-timers and do their job and kick them off the workforce, basically. So you're going to strike for a couple extra dollars, and then you're not going to have a job, possibly. So how does that make sense?
I would say you're absolutely right that these are things to consider, and it is important. It's absolutely important to count the costs. And like we were talking about earlier, do that power analysis. Can you win? And you're right. You don't know how long it's going to last. I don't think that this is certainly not a comparable industry, not at all. But we have seen in Alabama there was a coal miner strike that went on for 2 years, and I mean, frankly, they lost. They went back without a contract after 2 years. So sometimes when we fight we win is a very popular slogan, and it is true. But it's not when we fight, we always win, right? And that is definitely
agreed.
It's important that's important to understand and to take into account. But I will say that the most recent strike was 1997, and I believe it was I can't remember exactly, but it was pretty quickly that they were back to where they were before the strike. I think within 6 months,
15 days. Yeah, it was only 2 weeks, yeah.
No. What I'm saying is the strike, yes, the strike was 15 days. But, you mentioned about potentially if there's a strike, UPS is going to lose business and then they're going to have less jobs potentially. And just to speak to that, in 97, they did lose some business, but they got it all back and then some within 6 months, I think.
Right. So you have to, I guess for the people that are going to vote on this, I guess you can think about that, but we don't, again, factually speaking, we don't know that's going to be the same.
Exactly.
So you, especially as a part-timer, are going to risk your job to go on strike. As a full-timer, I have no risk. I just have the inconvenience of doing a different job at the same pay rate. I'm going to do your job at my pay rate as a full-timer bumping a part-timer. So and also, listen, if the vote comes back no, which it's not going to, I've been very clear about that, right? If it is, I'll be the first one there to show up. I'm a strike captain. I'll be there supporting the will of the people, unlike what happened last time when the 2/3 pushed the contract through. On the voting, you asked the previous caller. So what happens is, guys, the Teamsters will send something in the mail to you with a access code or a PIN number, whatever you want to call it, and then you follow the instruction, go on to the website, type in your PIN number and information, and you'll vote online. That's how the contract is voted on.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that. And somebody in the chat mentioned, and I did say this, it's totally different industry, different circumstances, but he said regarding the coal miner strike, difference between a strike at a dying industry and a strike at a place that caters 6% of the GDP. And yeah, I mean, exactly. There, obviously we can't say exactly what's going to happen, but you could almost guarantee that a strike at UPS would not be 2 years. But it's
yeah, no, I don't think it would be that long. I absolutely don't. I'm not in that camp, but you don't know what
you don't know what you don't know.
And some of the stuff that you have now in this contract, you're not guaranteed to get in the next tentative agreement, right? It's all off the table then, right? It's not like, oh, we keep this and so you don't know what you're going to lose in that case. So I'm just saying, for me personally, I'm not telling anybody how to vote. My opinion is just that it's going to pass because of all the good stuff that's in it. Is it perfect? No. Is it historic? I tell you, I've been very clear about it. The only thing that's going to be historic is the yes vote, the percentage that comes back.
Appreciate the call. Thank you.
Thanks, boys. Appreciate your fairness.
Yep. Let's get the next one in. 202 area code. We'll bring in the next caller from a 202 area code. 202. What's your name?
Hey there.
Where are you calling from?
Adam Jacob, this is Captain Green. I'm calling you from an undisclosed location overseas. Can you hear me okay?
Captain Green, calling from an undisclosed location. I can hear you.
Great. I'm a former UPS captain of 20 years and also a 22-year veteran of the United States Air Force. And I have firsthand experience of being ruthlessly targeted by UPS, having coerced employees that had substance abuse problems to lie about me and make up false stories because I was targeted for my commitment to enforcing safety and security of the airline and the flying public. And I'm with Richard Hooker out of Local 623. I've been following Richard's work. He seems like a very dynamic man. And he said that it's much bigger than about economics. He said that the contract is more about sustaining solid contract language that'll protect UPSers and the Teamsters from any 18 U.S. Code crimes that UPS is committing on a regular basis, which would include violence, retaliation, deceit, dishonesty. And they're doing this with impunity. And Sean O'Brien and both UPS and both Bob Travis of the IPA, who alleges solidarity with the Teamsters, they know that any TA language is garbage without these mandatory protections. The caller from California made a good point in that, we need the job protections. How can we be assured that we might not lose our jobs, just like the last caller said? We can't be assured that these things won't happen because we don't have regulatory agencies that are actually protecting the American worker. In my case, I filed a whistleblower complaint to the U.S. Department of Labor. Paul McDevitt, who is the inspector, who also inspected Carlene Pettit's case at Delta Airlines, he blatantly falsified false facts. He didn't conduct a single element of the required 8 elements in an IG investigation. And then he sent it to the FAA, and the FAA questioned why they hadn't received any evidence. And then he gave some lame excuse that we had a temp secretary, and they rubber stamped it. So I never got honest adjudication, and now I'm forced overseas. I've got about 5,000 hours now in a Boeing 777 working for a company overseas, forced out of my own country. But the point is this coercion of employees, troubled employees that are in trouble with the company. Jimmy Lamb case, Joe Tesney. Let's have a closer dig at what really happened in those cases in San Francisco and Birmingham, Alabama. I actually talked to the pastor of Joe Tesney, and he told me that Joe was a fine man. He loved his job. He loved his family. He loved his faith. but he said UPS was stalking him and literally walking on the heels of his shoes, intimidating him and threatening him, which eventually he snapped. And this is what happened in the Lamb case too. Lamb went into the San Francisco Gateway. He specifically targeted people that had been coerced and lied about him, because this was the only way for him, in his mind, to address his grievances. And that's absolutely unacceptable behavior. But this is the corporate culture that UPS is practicing on a daily basis with impunity, and the American worker can never get their case in front of an honest court of law or at a level of the Department of Labor. And the reason that is because, for instance, Julie Sue right now, I believe Julie Sue is going to be an excellent potential Secretary of Labor, unlike Eugene Scalia, who was the son of former Supreme Court Justice Scalia. You know, we can't get honest adjudication because they put their cronies in there that are against labor. But now we have Julie Sue, who's trying to get confirmed, but the dark money donors, to include companies like UPS, don't want her confirmed, because that way they can continue these acts of horrific workplace violence with impunity. So what I'm trying to emphasize here is that the Teamsters need to take a close look at the TA language. Tony Coleman, who is formerly an attorney for Frost, Brown, and Todd, now at Dinsmore and Scholl, he is the master of disaster that has been targeting UPSers for years, and he's the guy that fabricated and manufactured the false case against me for being a perfect UPS employee, over 20 years of service, perfect training record, perfect flight record, enforced safety, enforced security. I was just unhappy with the fact that we had a yellow union that was exclusively company controlled that didn't enforce the contract. So, you know, the Teamsters need to take a close look at this TA. They need to take a close look at the language in the TA. And if in fact they're going to do exactly what Richard Hooker said, and to, you know, make sure that Teamsters are no longer bullied, harassed, lied about, troubled employees are coerced to lie about others, and to get some protections in the contract language where grievances are actually heard rather than whimsically dismissed. What are your thoughts on that, Jacob?
I think, I think that's all. It would be pretty difficult to argue against somebody saying that they need to read the contract that they're going to be voting on.
You know, sometimes UPS and guys like Tony Coleman and some of our union leaders, especially, I can speak firsthand of the IPA. The IPA is one of the most corrupt unions. We've got more dead bodies at UPS. I just had a 2-hour conversation this afternoon trying to help another brother that was targeted for reporting fatigue concerns. And I'm sure fatigue is an issue with UPS employees, especially the feeder drivers and the everyday drivers. But in fatigue at UPS Airline, they target pilots that come in fatigue. They accuse you of some other unrelated issue, lying about calling in fatigue. And next thing you know, you're in front of a disciplinary hearing and the union's dropping a dime on you. And then the next day you're fired. And because the fired employee is a better employee, because it puts fear in the membership, just like I see what appears to be maybe fear to actually strike by our Teamsters brothers and sisters and to reject a TA that doesn't have language that protects them. I don't want to take too much more of your time, guys. You're doing a great job. We appreciate everything you're doing. I watch you all the time. At some point, I would love to share the tentacles of the diabolic and horrific lengths that UPS went to target me and to manufacture false facts and fabricate a case that was based completely on fraud. And to this day, 10 years later, and after having spent $500,000 and losing everything I had to get my day in court and to file briefs all the way to the Supreme Court, to never have my case heard and enter a court of law to challenge these criminals, I would love to share with you the details. And for the listeners, you can follow me on Twitter. My call sign is Truth, the letter B, the word told, truth be told, number 4, all. Truth be told for all. I'm rooting for you guys, and I hope you can defeat these criminals and you get what you're entitled to. You're not taking anything away from this company. Teamsters are earning whatever they get in the contract, and they should get more. And don't think for a second you're taking it, because you've already earned it.
Hey, before you go, where did you say you were calling from again?
An undisclosed location.
Yeah, I wanted to
Yeah,
see if
and-
he was going to
and I-
mess
and
up
I
and
have-
tell me.
You know, I
just
have,
wanted to see if he
I
was
have
gonna
to
mess
say
up
an
and tell me.
undisclosed look. I got to say an undisclosed location because ever since UPS unlawfully terminated me, and I still have yet to get my day in court because UPS has spent $6 million to make sure I never get my day in court. They blackballed me. I worked at Korean Airlines for a period of time. They found out where I was, and then the next thing I knew, my training was stopped. My partner's training was stopped. Now my training partner, UPS knew they screwed him over. Now he's a manager at UPS at the Anchorage Gateway in Alaska. But they blackballed me. They lied about me, and they've been trying to keep me unemployed so I can't continue the fight. It's sick. And, if I could just get this case in a court of law, the facts in themselves, I had 3 pilots that had undisclosed DUIs to the FAA. Michael Starnes and Mark Hirsch were their names, and another guy by the name of Mark McDermott and Peyton Cook. All 3 of these guys lied about me. We have overwhelming evidence beyond reasonable doubt. We have audio files, transcripts, we have emails, we have mountains of evidence, 6,000 pages of evidence, and UPS knows we have it, and they will not let me into a court of law. They've rigged this fight from every level of adjudication, from the district court to the circuit court to the Supreme Court and the Department of Labor. And the Department of Labor, I filed the whistleblower complaint. The investigator
Captain Green, I do apologize, but we're going to have to let you go. We have a few more callers on the line, and we're about to have to wrap up. But definitely, hope that you're able to call in at some point and talk to us some more about that. Yeah, I mean, it sounds
understood,
like
guys.
terrible.
All right, well, good luck and keep up the good work. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, brother.
Appreciate it.
Good one.
Next caller, been on the line for 30 minutes. Appreciate your patience. 701 area code.
What's going on, guys? I just wanted to say thanks for everything you guys are doing again. This TA is a little different, and I'm getting a lot of feedback from the hub, and people are wanting it, and people are not. But I think it's going to divide the full timers and part timers, and that's what I'm noticing.
Yeah.
So that's all I got.
What's your name and where are you calling from again? Sorry.
Just North Dakota, and my name's Tyler. Just
Tyler.
The last caller took up some time, so I just wanted to pass it on. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Thanks. Appreciate it. We got another caller on the line, 317 area code.
Hey, what's up, y'all?
What's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Will Hale. I'm calling out of Denton, Texas. I'm a part-timer and a shop steward. Obviously, as a part-timer, I'm not happy with the language around wages. We didn't get the catch-up raises for long-time part-timers that we needed. This sacrifices the new hires and basically locks in the turnover problem at UPS. Makes part-time a dead-end job for anybody hired after this contract goes into effect. Also, the AC language, I find it to be weak. We lost a brother of ours in Denton, Texas. He had a heat stroke on the highway. He'll never drive a package car again. It's amazing that he's talking and doing the walking that he's doing. This AC language, this will the company, they will drag their feet. Okay, we had fans negotiated into the last contract, right? It took the death of a brother in Waco. It took our brother having a heat stroke and injuring himself terribly on the highway for the company to finally get the fans in the trucks. The grievance process did not get us anywhere. Our leadership was not willing to fight for us. So my question, every time I see something about strong language, my question is, what is the mechanism of enforcement? And if it's some national committee of backslapping bureaucrats, that's nothing. That's nothing to us. All right. They said they were going to pull. They said they were going to pull the cameras out of the trucks. That was a strifeful issue. The company has promised to pull or to shut the cameras off, but they're not pulling them out of the trucks. Okay, how long, next contract, once they've got them all in the trucks, the company will say, oh, no, we actually want to, record the drivers now, and what are you guys willing to give up so that we don't do that? Okay, there's no good faith between us and the company. All right, and everybody needs to understand that. Everybody needs to see past. I mean, obviously the economics, for me, it's a disappointment on the part-time side, but everybody also needs to see past the economics and see that a lot of these wins are half wins or quarter wins painted as big wins. I hear a lot of scaremongering about a strike. I hear a lot of scaremongering about full-timers getting bumped up into the hub and displacing part-timers. Okay, part-timers, we're acutely aware of that. We just went through a whole thing where they were pulling 22 4s off the road and bumping them up into the hub and displacing part-timers. All right, so we know. Okay, we know the risks. All right, it's not and obviously it's a risk, but the thing that I'll leave y'all is. What would history look like if, brave people, didn't grab their brothers and sisters and take a leap of faith? So vote no. Thanks for doing what y'all are doing, and I'll get off the call and let other people speak.
Yep. Yeah, really appreciate it. Thanks so much for calling in. And I think we've gotten through our queue, and literally with 60 seconds to 12:30. Wow. How about that? How about that?
Really appreciate everyone who called in, who chatted in, who had their commentary, whatever side of this particular TA that you're on. As some of the brothers mentioned, you are all Teamsters, and you're all part of the same union. Ultimately, you're all part of one big fight. And so I hope that whatever happens, just know that the Valley Labor Report stands with you and stands in your struggle and supports all workers when they fight to make their lives better. And so if, I'll just say for myself, if, a yes vote is what happens, then, good on you. If a no vote is what happens and a strike happens, I'll be out there at the picket line to support you.
Yep, absolutely. Again, really appreciate everybody tuning in. Before you head out, if you would, like the stream, subscribe to the channel. We got 130 people watching right now and 70 people, 70 likes. So if you could, before you head out, give us a like, subscribe to the show. We do stuff like this. We have been doing this for 3 years. I know a lot of y'all, and we really appreciate you finding us in the last week or in the last month, all of y'all UPS Teamsters. But we've been on the air for 3 years doing stuff like this, and we cover all sorts of stuff, particularly in the South. We're broadcasting out of Alabama, so we are particularly interested in what's going on in labor in the South. So thanks for your time, everybody. If you want to find more of us, you can subscribe to the channel. And on Thursday, Adam does a shop talk that is it's not news, it's not anything like that. It is labor history, education, and training. Do you have what you're going to be talking about on Thursday?
Yeah, it's the first week of the month, and so it will be this month in labor history. So I'll be talking all about some of the strikes and historic struggles throughout the month of August when it comes to working class people. So yeah, y'all definitely stop by on Thursday morning on YouTube or Facebook.
Sci-Fi, thanks for hanging out with us today.
Thanks you guys for having me here. This was extremely informative.
I appreciate it.
This is going to be my conversation for the rest of the day. Like, you're not going to believe what's going on in Iowa, man.
I don't know, yeah. We were talking before the show, I think. Or maybe, did we talk about it during the show? I'm running together. But yeah, those folks in Iowa trying to put kids in the coal mines. Crazy stuff. And yeah, hope to bring you back on sometime.
Oh, yeah, for sure, man.
All right, man. That's going to be it for us this week, folks. Subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next week.